Good morning, Your Highnesses, Excellencies, esteemed dignitaries, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning and welcome to the AVPN Conference 2024, delivered in partnership with the United Arab Emirates Presidential Courts International Humanitarian and Philanthropic Council, under the patronage of His Highness Sheikh Thiab bin Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. We would also like to thank Reaching the Last Mile, Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan Foundation, Zayed Charitable and Humanitarian Foundation, and all our partners for making this conference happen. My name is Vaishali Anand Kumar. I'm part of the finance team at AVPN, and I'm delighted to be your host today morning. Before we begin, we have a few housekeeping announcements. As you know, we are having this conference over 2 venues. And if you haven't already done so, we encourage you to download the AVPN Events app, which has the full agenda. This will help you navigate through the multiple sessions across the 2 venues. Like yesterday, we will have shuttle buses running between the 2 venues throughout the day. Also remember to book your lunch at the venues that are available on the app. And if there is a change of plan, you can always unbook and rebook to the location you want. Lastly, when we do break for lunch, please use the appropriate exits. Each exit actually takes you to a different venue, so this will help you reach the right location. Also remember, door 4 today is going to be closed, so please use doors 1, 2, and 3 only. We will begin today with a performance that I'm really looking forward to. This is a cultural experience involving the traditional preparation and presentation of kahwa, or the Arabic coffee. The practice of serving kahwa communally has been a part of the Emirati tradition of hospitality and generosity across centuries. Not only is it a part of celebrations, it is a symbol of unity that preserves social, political, and cultural associations that have helped shape Emirati society into what it is today. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting Beit al-Kawa, a symbol of unity.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Beit al-Qahwa experience. Beit al-Qahwa is a ceremony that reflects the spirit of Emirati culture. In 2015, Qahwa has been listed in UNESCO as Intangible Heritage Culture of Humanity. So now I would like to introduce Sana'at al-Qahwa, which means the coffee maker, and her name is Al-Unud. My name is Bishayr. I will guide you through the process of making al-Qahwa most traditional way. So now she starts roasting the coffee beans using tawa and mahmas. Tawa is a pan and mahmas is a tool used to stir the coffee beans. Over here we have stages of the roasting, starting with the raw beans, which has a green color. Then we have the light roasted beans, which locally known as shagra, the blonde preferred by few people, while majority of people enjoy the medium roasted beans, as we're gonna use it today. Now she's placing the coffee beans into al-mibruda. And al-mibruda is a tool used to cool down the coffee beans and removing the husk, and it's made from palm tree leaves by Emirati women through handicrafting. Manually, she will remove the burned beans and the husk that can affect the taste and quality of al-qahwa. Now she will use al-minhaz and the rashad to grind the coffee beans. Please pay attention to the sound and I'll be explaining it. So So the sound that you heard is a sign for a neighborhood that fresh qahwa is prepared, and they are most welcome to join them in al-majlis, and al-majlis is sitting area. Now she's using al-fanyan, a coffee cup, as a measurement tool to measure the amount of ground coffee. So in front of you is what we call ma'amil, and ma'amil are the tools we use to prepare al-qahwa. The brewing process involves in 3 coffee pots, and each one has a purpose. The biggest one we call it dallat al-khamra, it's used to boil water only. The medium one is dallat al-malgama, it's used to prepare al-qahwa and add flavors. And the smallest one is dallat al-mzalla, it's used to serve al-qahwa. So now she will start preparing al-ganad, and al-ganad are the spices and flavors that we could add it in our coffee. She will crush the cardamom. And we have 5 typical types of al-ganad that we could add it in our coffee. We have nutmeg, cloves, cardamom, rose water, and saffron. So for today, we're gonna add the cardamom and saffron, and this is the most famous mix here in UAE. So she will add the crushed cardamom to the little malgama. While saffron to the little mizalla to perceive a good taste of the saffron. Now she's preparing a lifa. It's made from palm tree fiber, as act as a filter to filter the coffee and the cardamom. صانعة القهوة will be the first person who tastes القهوة to ensure the taste and quality. The sound of rattling cups indicates that qahwa is ready to be served. So as you notice, she's holding a dalla in her left hand while fanyan in her right hand. And this is from majlis etiquettes. And usually in majlis, we start serving qahwa from the right side unless we have someone important or an oldest person. We always start serving them first, then we continue from their right side. So this is the end of our experience. We hope you enjoy it, and thank you.
Let's begin our day today with a little recap of yesterday's highlights. Let's take a look at the video.
As we gather here today, we recognize the immense potential that lies in our diverse continent and the pivotal role that philanthropy and social investment play in shaping our future.
Yesterday was an amazing day, wasn't it? We heard about UAE's commitment to giving, or rather UAE's commitment to serving. That was very, very beautifully explained. We heard about the shared challenges that we have, especially in climate and health. We also heard about the very innovative ways to address these challenges. Yesterday was about philanthropy. Today, we are shifting gears to impact investing. Last year, at the Kuala Lumpur conference, we had our inaugural Impact Investing Day. Since then, AVPN has formed a dedicated impact investing team that focuses on building the ecosystem of impact investing in Asia through multiple initiatives. The team has put together the second edition of the Impact Investing Day. To kick off today's events, I'm delighted to introduce AVPN's Chief of Impact Investing, Vikas Arora, and invite him to give the welcome address.
Your Highnesses, esteemed partners, and creators of impact, a very good morning to you. I extend a warm and heartfelt welcome to each one of you. It's genuinely heartening to see such a convergence of passion and purpose here in Abu Dhabi. We've come together from across the globe, united by a shared conviction to create meaningful change. We are here to shape a world where prosperity is shared by all and where opportunity is not a privilege, but a right for all. But let us all pause for a moment and indulge in the power of a shared dream. Imagine a world where the basics are all available. Imagine a world where the essentials for a dignified life, like clean water, education, and healthcare, are universally available. A world where every individual and every community has the means to thrive. A world where we treat our planet with the reverence it deserves, safeguarding it for our children and future generations. However, as we shift our gaze to the present, we are met with a daunting challenge: a funding gap of approximately $4 trillion that separates us from realizing our shared dream. This gap is more than a figure. It's a symbol of missed opportunities and unfulfilled promises. This massive funding gap issues an urgent call to asset owners and allocators to unite and create impact at scale. It urges us to deploy innovative financial strategies, and more importantly, our response must be swift and decisive. It is against this backdrop that AVPN, as the only pan-Asian impact investing platform focused on the Asia region, has a significant role to play. Our mission is to bring together investors and investment opportunities directly focused on Asia. AVPN spearheads initiatives to foster connectivity and raise awareness about impact investing. Our initiatives are strategically designed to streamline and enhance the mobilization of capital to impact. So let me highlight 3 initiatives that we choose to focus on in the coming year. Our first initiative introduces a pioneering Impact Investing Advisory Council, comprising of thought leaders and experts drawn from the full spectrum of capital pools, regions, and sectors. The Council embodies a reservoir of collective wisdom, offering strategic insights that will open up new avenues for connection, collaboration, and investment. Their collective expertise will be pivotal in ensuring that AVPN's impact remains strategic. In our second initiative, we delve into the transformative potential of blended finance. This is a structuring approach that has the potential to unlock vast pools of capital where traditional philanthropy and government aid alone cannot address. It exemplifies the power of partnership in action. And this fits right into our DNA of being an ecosystem builder that covers the entire continuum of capital. And therefore, we are here to play a very crucial role. We work closely with our members like the Convergence, the Blended Finance Company, and IPE Global, who have deep expertise in blended finance, not only as thought leaders, but equally focused on structuring and executing transactions. Our third initiative solidifies our dedication to accountability, a robust framework for impact management and measurement, or IMM. As impact funders seek to articulate the impact the investments are making, it is increasingly becoming mainstream to adopt an IMM policy. It is also understood that there is an increasing need to have service providers that understand the nuances of the Global South. Through our collaboration with our members with specialist organizations like Bluemark, Impact Intelligence, and Satwa, AVPN is committed to equipping our network of funders with the tools necessary for impact assessment and verification.
We'll just pause for a few seconds. May I request everyone to please stand to welcome His Highness Sheikh Thiab bin Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Deputy Chairman of the Presidential Court for Development and Martyrs' Families Affairs. Please welcome His Highness Sheikh Thiab bin Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Deputy Chairman of the Presidential Court for Development and martyrs' families' affairs. Welcome to the AVPN Conference 2024, delivered in partnership with the United Arab Emirates, Presidential Courts, International Humanitarian and Philanthropic Council, under the patronage of His Highness Sheikh Thiab bin Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan.
The Impact Investing Day 2024 promises to be immersive and insightful. We will hear from leaders in impact investing, especially from excellencies from here in Abu Dhabi. We will be covering diverse topics like the dynamics of energy transition, education and skilling, financial inclusion, and the use of artificial intelligence and technology. A very special focus is being placed on women in impact investing and the critical role of Islamic finance in impact investing will certainly be explored. However, this conference is about you, so I encourage each one of you to leverage our platform to connect and forge new partnerships. In conclusion, as we embark on this journey together, let us celebrate the power of unity. The obstacles we face are significant, but our collective resolve and collaborative spirit will guide us through. The AVPN Global Conference stands as a vibrant hub of over 1,500 attendees representing diverse cultures, perspectives, and expertise. Together, we are more than a network. We are a movement. So come join us in our resolve to create one Asia, one future. And I would like to extend my sincere thanks to His Highness Sheikh Thiab bin Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Chairman of the International Humanitarian and Philanthropic Council, and to our partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Vikas, for setting the agenda for today. Let us begin the day with a conversation that explores the leadership dynamics in West Asia and provides a deeper understanding of the influential role that this region plays in the global impact investing landscape. Please join me in welcoming His Excellency Humaid Al-Shimari, Deputy Group CEO, Chief Corporate and Human Capital Officer at Mubadala. Mubadala is a forward-thinking sovereign investor responsible for driving the economic diversification of the UAE. Joining him in conversation is Mr. Salim A. Isaid, business editor of The National, a leading English language daily newspaper published in Abu Dhabi.
I lost my moderator. I can ask myself the questions. They're fine. I can play both roles. All right, we'll give him 2 minutes. No, 20 seconds. 20 seconds. And then I can ask myself the questions. We'll clap. How about if we clap for him? Oh, there he is. Please, let's welcome Mr. Salim. Oh, now he's going to ask me the tough questions. I didn't think that went through. Well, the color of the jacket is nice. He's not wearing a tie.
Hayak Allah. I didn't realize we were starting early. My apologies. Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. And
I don't think I've ever had that before in my career, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Welcome.
And thank you everyone for joining, and Your Excellency, thank you for this opportunity. Sorry for being late, and I know we don't have too much time to talk about this, but I would love to ask you about what has Mubadala's journey been to, sorry, a little out of breath as I was hustling down, to actually invest with impact. Before we talk about the details, can you talk about where you started to reach where we are today?
Okay, I'll do you a favor and prolong the answer.
Please.
Speak very slowly so you can take your breath, have a cup of water, and relax. See, this is partnership.
Exactly. I agree. See? Demonstrated right here.
So, first of all, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Your Highness, Your Excellencies, it gives me a great pleasure to be with you today and represent Mubadala Investment Company in this wonderful event. So, Mubadala is a sovereign wealth fund wholly owned by the government of Abu Dhabi. It is today a collection of multiple sovereign wealth funds that was created over the years. And the main mandate for all of the sovereign wealth funds we have here in Abu Dhabi is to diversify our economy and have a more balanced economical, let's say, prosperity and growth for our nation going forward. And this started all the way from 1974 when His Highness Sheikh, God bless his soul, Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan created ADIA as the biggest and the first sovereign wealth fund. So Mubadala represents Abu Dhabi. We have been blessed having His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, the President, as our first chairman when he was the Crown Prince. He was really the mandated leader who created Mubadala and the thinking around it. And we've been very proud to actually represent and be having that privilege of representing Abu Dhabi. And you heard it yesterday through a lot of the speakers that the Abu Dhabi culture, the partnership, the thought partner in whatever we do, in everything we do. And investment is not a different element than that. We've been always told to be a positive investor, a partner of sort, to have integrity that represents Abu Dhabi and the greater UAE in whatever we do and wherever we are. So over the last, say, 20-odd years, we have, embarked on a lot of investments locally in the UAE and also internationally. We are in about over 50 countries today. We have a diverse portfolio around geographies, around sectors, and it is always the model for us at Mubadala. Wherever we invest, we're going to invest in a geography or a sector that fits our purpose, add value to our economy, add value to our portfolio, to the stability of the portfolio, but also more importantly is finding the right partner in whatever we do. I can maybe count one or two investments where we feel that we're going to go there and do something on our own. Rarely happens at Mubadala. We believe in that partnership model.
And can I ask you about that? Like, what do you look for in a partner? Because you're putting a lot of consideration, into investments and to make impact. So, of course, who you work with matters a lot.
Definitely.
And can you explain what you look for in a partner and how you measure that impact as well?
So, our partners have to have a like-minded investment thesis to Mubadala. They have to be best in class. We need to understand the sectors we're in and the partners and how do they rank in that. And we also have a request from our partners that we need to make sure that this partner thinks long-term when it comes to investing with Mubadala. We're not what we call a stock market player. We're on in and out of investments. We take the long-term investment model. We look at the sectors where there is tailwinds, where there is growth into them. So we need to look at that level of partnership. Also, we need to look at the partner who has good standings globally and wherever the geography are. And part of what you talked about impact investing today. This is a new term all of you ladies and gentlemen are coming up with, and we like it. It's a very nice phrase. But I'll take you back a few examples. 2006, the leadership decides we're going to go into renewable. An oil-rich, gas-rich country, deep into the economy, the petrochemical sector, but then our leadership decides we're going to create something called Masdar, and we'll ask Mubadala to lead it, and we want to invest in renewable energies. And everybody was saying, what is the UAE doing? What is Abu Dhabi doing? 2006, with all of that. Today, you want to talk about solar power, you want to talk about wind. All of that is easy conversations. 2006, in the Middle East, in the Gulf, that was not an easy conversation. But we had a leader who had the vision to say, oil and gas is not a sustainable commodity, and we need to prepare for our growth and our security in the future. That is impact investing. That is having the foresight all the way back in 2006 and doing that. Okay. And we're in a geography as an investor, we want to add value. We want to add value to the community. We want to add value to our partners. We want to add value to the culture we're in. And I'll give you another example. We have a few investments in Brazil. And about 5-6 years ago, there was a dam, industrial dam breakage. Had nothing to do with Mubadala, nothing at all. But we are in the geography. We see the suffering of the community we're in. But that's Abu Dhabi. Again, that's not Mubadala. Listen, I always want to bring you back to Abu Dhabi's mindset, the service and the love of humanity that Shamma was talking about yesterday. You know, what Noura was talking about, reconstructing the mosque, Al-Amawi Mosque in Mosul. It is Abu Dhabi. It is the UAE. Nothing to do with Mubadala, nothing to blame with us. We went out there. We saw what the need of the community. We put a big chunk of money, a big chunk of our resources to help that community to recover from that disaster. That's the partnership. Not in money terms, in improving the community, in improving where we are, and creating that reputation. Because again, every single one of us is an ambassador for the UAE and Abu Dhabi. What I want to do is, next year I leave Brazil, for example, as Mubadala. And then another entity from Abu Dhabi wants to come and say, we want to have that memory to say, wow, this is Abu Dhabi Inc. That's what they do. This is it. We'll open the door for them. That's what we do.
Definitely, and I think you've identified an important point that character matters, and communicating that, with impact and being a part of the community, that's essential, in this type of work. And could you please share insights on some of the best practices you have seen in impact fund managers?
So we pride ourselves at trying to understand our partners and build a relationship with them. And our model is always find something tangible, build a partnership, see the progress, see how it goes, and if we like the partner, if they prove the concept, the due diligence concept, then we'll build a bigger relationship with them. And that's the way it has been, you have nice phrases around it today, but that's always been the way we do business at Mubadala. Now with the ESG agenda, the environment, the carbon footprint and all of that, these are new areas for focus. We've been focusing on them for about 4 or 5 years. And you have to understand, we have our own beliefs. If I'm invested in a sector, let's say $10 billion, and the sector today has issues when it comes to ESG agenda. As a custodian of Abu Dhabi wealth and Abu Dhabi money, we're not just going to have a fire sale of that investment and let go of it. But we'll do 3 things, and we will do it with our partners. I'm giving you history because this is what goes into the future and the way we look at our GPs and LPs relationships today. We'll say, all right, so 3 things we have to look at it. How can we reduce, let's say, for example, carbon footprint? How can we reduce the carbon footprint out of that investment? What can we create? And we have great examples of what we've been doing around that sector, around that philosophy and that solution. The second, all right, what can we do to offset the carbon footprint? And the third and last resource is, okay, we can't resolve this. What can we do to in an orderly manner, get out of that investment and deploy those returns into something that is much working for us on our ESG agenda. The last thing, we'll accept any pressure from anybody to say, that doesn't work, you need to get rid of it tomorrow. We are in Mubadala, we have a long-term vision, we have our own mandate, our own philosophy when it comes to that, and that's the way we're going to do it. And I'll give you an example. We own a company that is deep-rooted in production, the whole value chain of petrochemicals, called Cepsa in Spain. And we have been working with them for the last 4 years and our partners at Carlyle to fix the strategy and the evolution of it. So from a pure oil and gas petrochemical company today to a whole new energy company where they're investing in renewables, they're reducing their carbon footprint, and they're enhancing. And this is in the heart of Europe. So can you find any other geography today more than ESG agenda in Europe? That's what we're doing. But we never said, oh, Cepsa is a tabooed investment now, we're going to get out of it. No, we're never going to do that. We believe there is a lot of technologies, the globe, the researchers, the universities, the partners will develop in reducing carbon footprints, capturing carbon, finding solutions, all that, and we are there to partner with all of those individuals and entities and organizations to create that impact.
Definitely, and looking at the evolving landscape, looking towards Asia, what do you perceive as the sectors or themes to have the greatest potential when looking in that direction?
Well, Asia is home, the bigger home for the UAE and for Abu Dhabi. And we are really invested already there. And we believe that Asia, I hope I'm not revealing too many secrets, Asia requires Mubadala to have more focus on it and be more involved in our portfolio. Today, Asia represents about 12% of the portfolio, and we want to increase that exposure. We're looking at countries, of course, like China, the second largest economy, but then Japan, Korea, Vietnam, India, those are all big geographies for us, in addition to the Middle East, of course. But I think Asia in AI and digitization and renewables, a small investment, Tata Renewables in India is an investment that we've went into a couple of years ago, and we believe that creating a bigger stream to develop energy sources that are eco-friendly in India, the largest population in the globe, is something of great financial value for Mubadala, but also great investment impact for Abu Dhabi and Mubadala, and also helps in a bigger political relationship with the investment thesis that we have for us in India. So Asia is important. Good example, data centers. See, again, a lot of people don't understand the challenges when we have the energy mix. And we think, okay, renewable is the answer for our energy mix. And we've been very vocal. Energy transition is the solution. Ladies and gentlemen, let me give you these examples. Today, we're moving into AI. We're moving into clouds. And I don't think I have to preach to any of you the amount of data centers and energy consumption on those data centers that we need. Add to the factor that today, every single government out there saying, I want to control my data. I want to bring my data onshore. I'm not going to put my data in whatever country or geography outside of my control. So when you think about that, you think about the energy demand and how much data, AI, and digitization is actually putting out there. The energy demand for that, if we're going to go solar and wind and other renewable, even if you want to exclude, like Europe was trying, nuclear, there is no way you solve that energy demand. So hence, we've discovered that we need to still continue to develop energy sources, traditional, nuclear, gas, solar and all of that, because it is the right thing to develop that emerging sector, but keep the stable energy supply for it. And these are areas we're very interested to develop in Asia.
Definitely, and I think it also speaks to what you said about Mubadala investing early in things. So identifying that as advanced technology, now there's the hype, everyone's investing in it, but also on the flip side, as you said, it has a high, cost of energy, water usage, things like that. So investing that hand in hand, that transition is very essential. And lastly, I wanted to understand, what is your recommendation for stakeholders on how they can collaborate more efficiently on driving investment in Asia?
Well, I think part of the challenges, and I'll be very open and honest with you ladies and gentlemen, of us going into geographies, is the governance structure. Are the laws protective of foreign investors? And again, don't think about, this is a concern for us in Asia or Africa. This is even a concern for us in some countries in Europe and the West. Changing taxation laws, coming up with regulations that are imminent and immediate, rather than giving investors, foreign investors, time to adjust to these regulations. That is always a challenge. So the biggest challenge for us when we go into a geography, understanding the governance model, understanding the laws of the land. That is one big challenge. The second one, when we look at a new geography and a new area, is, okay, the partners. Is there any existing partners within that geography? Because again, if you know someone in town who knows the streets of the town and the lay of the land, that makes your life much easier if you see eye to eye on the investment thesis. If not, then we need to find the international investor, co-investor, that also has experience in that geography. That is also important for us. It is very difficult for even a conglomerate and a global investor like Mubadala to go into new geographies that we don't have a good understanding of the lay of the land, and that is always an ease into it. Our model, as I said earlier, is find a partner, do small investments, understand the geography, understand the sector, understand the partner, and then if we have all of those tick marks, then we can grow that relationship and that investment.
Exactly, and it sounds like what you're describing is, understanding the ecosystem, and that comes from the partners you're working with. So if someone wants to work with Mubadala in Asia, then you to communicate that, show how things work on the ground, and also regulatory environments, matter of course in terms of knowing how to operate within, and these are the stepping stones, to reach goals of impact. I think, we're nearing to an end, so I just want to thank you, Your Excellency, for speaking to us about this, and I feel like it was very comprehensive. Do you have any final thoughts, you'd like to share, on the matter?
Well, thank you very much. Again, just if you allow me, Your Highness, because he said this, Your Excellency, so many times, and I hate that, we can clap for Salim for being late again. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for not putting me on the spot.
Join me in thanking His Excellency and Mr. Salim Assaid for bringing some fun moments into the plenary today. Thank you for sharing with us Mubadala's expectations as a sovereign investor and providing insights on how to build partnerships. We do a bit of shift again. We have an announcement from one of our main partners. And for that, I invite on stage Mr. Mohammed Haji Al Khoury, Director General of the Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan Foundation, who will make an announcement, which will be followed by a video.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. في البداية أود أن أشكر صاحب السمو الشيخ محمد بن زايد آل نهيان رئيس دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة الله يحفظه على دعمه لا محدود في توفير كل سبل الراحة سواء داخل دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة أو خارجها، وفي تقديم يد العون والمساعدة والاستجابة الفورية لجميع البشر على مستوى العالم بغض النظر عن الدين والجنس والعرق واللون. وهذا شيء ليس غريب على صاحب السمو الشيخ محمد بن زايد آل نهيان الله يحفظه، لأنه ماشي على نفس نهج المغفور له الشيخ زايد بن سلطان آل نهيان الله يرحمه ويغفر له إن شاء الله. اليوم الحمد لله مؤسسة خليفة بن زايد آل نهيان للأعمال الإنسانية سوف تطلق صندوق لدعم المشاريع الصغيرة والمتوسطة وأيضا متناهية الصغر بمبلغ 100 مليون لدعم المشاريع داخل دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة وأيضا خارج دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة، وذلك بالشراكة مع البنوك والشركاء في دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة وأيضا خارج دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
We thank Mr. Mohammad Haji Al Khoury for the announcement of 100 million dirhams towards Micro and Small Enterprises Initiative. Can we have a round of applause, please? In recent years, we have seen rapid growth in the impact investing industry. In this ever-growing and ever-changing field, the challenges we face have also grown exponentially. In the next panel for the day, we will explore the latest trends in impact investing and its future potential. To moderate this session, Please welcome Ms. Oriel Morrison, a well-known business and financial journalist who has worked with CNBC and Bloomberg before she co-founded APAC Network. Please also welcome our panelists, Mr. Ken Shibusawa, CEO of Shibusawa and Company, Mr. Ahmed Ali Alwan, CEO Hub 71, and Mr. Rajiv Lal, founder of the Mondial Impact.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to start off by saying I am on time. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Now, I'd also like to give a special welcome to our panelists at the end here, Rajiv, because I was a bit concerned that he wasn't going to make it today, because yesterday when he turned up to do an interview with me, he hadn't paid his taxi. Because he didn't have cash, okay. So we did save him. So he does owe me one, so we'll remember that over the course of this session today. So please, one more warm round of applause for our panel. Now, we've got a very, very important topic to discuss today. But I think after conversations that I had over the course of yesterday, one of the big questions that was being asked is what exactly is impact investing? Because depending on what area or what industry you are in, it does mean slightly different things, and even those little nuances can change conversations. And I know, Rajiv, this is particularly important to you. So let me ask you to start off by giving us a sense of, from your perspective, what does impact investing mean?
Well, I mean, this is a much discussed topic, and what I wanted to do actually is to inject a slightly different frame from where I'm coming from to describe what impact is. And the reason I say slightly different, because I really believe that impact can be embedded on a much broader and wider scale in mainstream corporate operations. It doesn't have to be relegated to a small set of impact investing activities. Impact normally evokes the sense of a trade-off between profit and an impactful purpose, or a societal gain, or a societal goal. And I think that that is the wrong framing for it. I think impact investing is about investing with a broader worldview. It's investing through a lens that allows you to appreciate how rapidly the world is changing and what are the new risks that are now emerging. When you appreciate the world through this lens, you recalibrate your business to become more relevant to a broader group of stakeholders, and that assuredly is the path to building a long-term sustainable business. So impact is about staying relevant to a broader group of stakeholders in order to build a business that is long-term sustainable.
And let me ask you to add to that, from your perspective, do you differ at all from what Rajiv has just described?
Firstly, thank you for this wonderful panel. I'm very honored here to be in front of His Highness Sheikh Diab and one of my great mentors, His Excellency Abu Abdullah. I'll kind of take you back a little about Hub 71, and for those of you who don't know, Hub 71 is a tech ecosystem enablement initiative backed and founded by the government of Abu Dhabi, managed by Mubadala. Impact for us, the way we see it, is very synonymous with venture capital. We have worked with a lot of tech startups, all who have developed different solutions in order to solve real-world problems. So yes, adding on to what Rajiv mentioned, we're very I think we go just a level more granular in saying that today we see that any technology that comes out from these startups is trying to address a real life problem that's faced by humanity. The added element is the commerciality and feasibility of these solutions, which ultimately feed into a global objective.
You said before that VC to you is synonymous with impact. Is that what you've just described?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
For us, all venture capital is founded now through or is based on developing solutions that solve real-life problems. So technology is synonymous with impact today, especially in the startup scene.
Ken, let me bring you in to the conversation here. You're very well known on your views on stakeholder capitalism. Does this feed into what we've just been discussing? I mean, is this a 1 + 1 = 2 type equation?
Sure, thank you, Ariel. Again, thank you for the United Emirates Presidential Council for giving this opportunity, and not enough AVPN for giving this top opportunity to participate in this panel. Just as a background, this phrase stakeholder capitalism, Japan 150 years ago emerged from an emerging country, and my grandfather's grandfather is credited as being the first, creating the first bank in Japan. He is known as the father of Japanese capitalism. But his view was not just about us, the shareholders, enriching themselves, but if you gather the dewdrops, resources, and you make it into a mighty river and float around, that it'll bring wealth to the nation. And in present-day language, what he was envisioning was actually what I call stakeholder capitalism. Because how do you create value? Well, shareholders by ourselves can't create value. It's the corporations that create value. And how does a corporation create value? You need the shareholders, well, you need the employees, you need the management, you need the procurement, society, environment. And so in that respect, capitalism in the past 100, 200, 150 years or so left behind a lot of stakeholders. And part of it is the externalities, including the environment and society. Why is ESG illegal in some states in the United States? Well, I think because the E went ahead, G went ahead, but the S got left behind, basically. And so for impact investing going forward, I think bringing the S up is very, very important. We always talk about saving the planet, which is a very, very important aspect of impact. But it's not entirely correct, I think, because the planet will be around for a long, long time after we are gone. So it's more about save the people on the planet, I believe. In that respect, I wear many different hats, but one hat I'm wearing that here today is an initiative called III for Global Health. And it's an initiative that was endorsed by the G7 Hiroshima Summit last year, launched at the United Nations General Assembly last year, side event. And it's an initiative to call on partners around the world to say, hey, to solve issues with global health, we need new, private sector capital, and we need partners to do that. And we could find partners through this concept of impact. And that's our agenda. And if you're interested, I can go into more detail about that later.
You just mentioned your great-grandfather.
Yes. Great-grandfather's grandfather.
Yeah, grandfather's grandfather. What do you think he would make today of what we're discussing here?
Well, I never met him, but but I would say it's something that not just my great-grandfather, but anybody that would say, as a businessman, to be sustainable, it's not just about yourself, but it's about bringing wealth and well-being for all stakeholders involved. And so I would say his philosophy is actually what's called Longo and Soroban, which is the teachings of Confucius, which is morality, and Soroban, which is the abacus, which is business. And it's not a trade-off, but it's a trade-on. And what is impact investing? It's not a trade-off, but it's a trade-on.
So that's an interesting point, and I think that's one that we do need to discuss today. Is there a trade-off between doing good and making money. I mean, that is the bottom line. You talked about ESG. Is there a trade-off between the E and the S? Rajiv, I know this is something that you've spoken about in detail before.
So the short answer is I don't think there is a trade-off. And it's because it depends on how you look at the business and the time frame over which you look at your business. So to Ken's point, he used the term externality. And you can translate that term into a vocabulary of risk. So externalities are risks that we don't normally evaluate. And shareholder capitalism, to use Ken's vocabulary, is a narrow interpretation of the risk environment. So as a good, sound business builder, I would really like to have a very comprehensive view of what risk it is that I'm dealing. When you do that, you try and incorporate that which is unseen, unintended consequences of what you're doing, for example, the societal implications, your long-term societal connect, your relevance, your social license to operate. These are long-term, very serious risks for business, your responsibility to the planet. So when you take account of those and you appropriately adjust the time frame over which you build your business, there is no trade-off. And what is ironic, actually, is that this vocabulary of trade-off seems to have come into business vocabulary with the creation of the joint stock company and the separation of management from ownership. If you talk to family-owned businesses around Asia, which is my experience mostly, you'll find that they really think long-term. They're thinking about building multi-generational businesses. And so they take their responsibilities to the wider group of stakeholders much more seriously than modern management teams do.
So it's a time frame. Is that what you're saying? It's all about the way that you're looking forward.
So time frame is definitely a very important aspect of it. And the tyranny of the quarterly expectations from capital markets is something that really a visionary business leader, one serious about building a long-term sustainable business, really needs to resist.
So maybe I'll just build on that.
Please.
Because I see where you're coming from, Rajiv, but historically the trade-off did exist. And you're exactly right. Today, we're in an environment where we increasingly see that trade-off dissipate. Historically, whenever you wanted to kind of get more into ESG objectives as an organization and a corporate, it is a significant or a separate allocation that you had to think about. Today, the prime example I would use is electric vehicles, right? Because that is a great product. I'm sure a number of you have electric vehicles here, but today it's a commercially viable product, and most people acquire it not because of the impact element behind it, but because it's just a great product. And us at Hub 71, seeing a lot of newly forming companies, startups, we see them take out this trade-off. Whenever they present solutions, they're commercially viable, but by the way, they're resolving real-world problems. Decarbonization, optimizing industrial operations to make them a bit more sustainable and to reduce efficiencies, reinvesting excess heat into the business. So today's environment is quite unique because that trade-off is no longer existing. You're embedding impact strategies because they make a lot of sense for you as an organization to grow and develop. And that's definitely, back to the, I guess, theme of the panel, that's definitely a key theme that we're building on in the UAE and I would say globally.
Ken, you have been advising for a number of years now. How much have things changed for you when it comes to this trade-off? Because we're seeing the world change very, very rapidly. Trends are different, as we've just been hearing about. The new businesses that are being built today are being built in a different way with different considerations at the forefront.
Sure, thank you. Well, for the past 20 years, I've been trying to interact between the investment sector and the social sector in Japan. And in that process, in that journey, in 2008, I launched a cross-generational, meaning investment for the next generation, like 30-year time horizon. This is for the individual investors in Japan investing in public Japanese companies. This is called Commons Asset Management. And recently, we launched a year ago an impact fund for public companies in Japan. So that's come along. I'm currently launching a partnership with the Keizai Doyukai, which is the Japan Association of Corporate Executives, and the Africa Development Bank to make investments, impact investments into Africa. Currently, I'm also the president of GSG NAB Japan. GSG is, of course, the global steering group for impact investing. And also the vice chair for Impact Consortium in Japan, which is established under the leadership of our Prime Minister Kishida for the new form of capitalism. And so, as you can see, it's over the last 20 years, it's really progressed, I think, over the years. And currently, as I mentioned, the triple F of global health. So now, when I look at it 20 years ago, people just thought that as a trade-off. And trade-offs do exist because you need trade-offs because it increases efficiencies, productivity. But if you just rely on the trade-off, you're just trading off something that already exists. So you're not creating new creation or new value. And to me, a trade-on basically means something that doesn't look like it might fit, not fit, but trading on is you make it fit. And if you can make it fit, well, guess what? You created something new. It's a new innovation. And the reason why I believe this is important is for corporations in Japan, we say 30 years for corporations, meaning 30-year time life. It's not true because we have listed companies 150 years old. And so I think what that's saying is businesses are maybe 30 years, meaning businesses have to adapt to the new environment. And for the new environment, you always need to be not just trading off, but you need to be innovative. You need to create something new to be able to be sustainable. So I'm not denying the efficiency, the productivity, which is very, very important. But I think we should keep our minds open to say, hey, maybe this fits and this fits. And it's not easy. It's not easy. But if you make it fit, guess what? Well, you created something new. It's a new innovation, and it's a new step towards sustainable, not just business, but our society.
So, Ahmed, is it easier for you, do you believe, because you are dealing with new companies, doing new things at this forward part of thinking?
It's easy because whenever we solutions that says AI, will provide these amazing cost savings for your business, definitely all companies are going to take them on because why wouldn't they? Easy for us to say as an entity because we look at these great founders, great companies, great solutions. But then we talk to the corporates, and we have great partners across the board. And we tell them, well, this AI solution that if you apply it to your industrial value chain, you're going to generate these cost savings and you reduce emissions, etc. And they're like, Ahmed, if it's this whole tracking is a bit whimsical to us. If it's a specific valve, for example, that we can apply right away and we can immediately see what's happening, it immediately is interesting for us. So the point I'm trying to make is that we're almost there. There are solutions that are starting to interest big industrial players, larger corporates. However, there is this kind of knowledge or I'd say operational knowledge gap that needs to be filled between the solutions that exist today and the startup founders or technology developers will help the business and where the readiness of the corporates are. You talk about the oil and gas industry, you talk about the prop tech industry, the amounts of solutions that exist that could support these industries is endless. We see them tantamount. Prop developers are used to the older models of how they operate, so they're like, well, this is not part of my extended family, so I'm not going to work with them yet. And oil and gas, for example, industrial solutions are looking for more hardware applications immediately. A longer 5-year time horizon is not something that they have been yet educated or cultured for. What we see, though, back to what Ken-san was saying, in the next 5-10 years, there's a huge impetus from the leadership here, from the government, and you need to start working on these. You need to start thinking about sustainable solutions is important. That's opening eyes. So I think in 5 years, this is going to be the real value proposition of Abu Dhabi, of the UAE, as being this amazing test bed for new climate tech technologies to come out and to help really help these industries operate in a novel way.
And I think we probably need to bring Rajiv Mondiale Impact into this conversation now, because you saw this need. You're just talking about a knowledge gap. You've seen this need yourself and your co-founders. And it's a big enough need and a great enough need that you've started a company to try and find a solution to this problem. So do you want to just take us through exactly what you're trying to achieve with Mondiale Impact?
So Mondial Impact is, we're just a small group of partners that are trying to influence board governance. So we are trying to develop interactive pedagogic tools to engage boards to help them navigate this changing of lens and perspective. So it's not an easy conversation by any means, and it depends where the starting point for a particular board is. But what we are finding is that the sweet spot is to help them understand what are the drivers of innovation that can allow the company to, in some sense, arrive at the new frontier of trade-offs, of maximizing returns in the risk environment that is constraining them. When you look at risk differently, as I was explaining earlier. So you can't do that without innovating. If you do not innovate, or if you do not think about innovation in the sense that we've been talking about, then it's a slippery slope down a trade-off, narrow trade-off between return and purpose. But if you look at it as an opportunity, so let's take an example. So a lot of companies today feel very burdened by the growing pressure for compliance and disclosure. And it is a burden, there's no doubt about it, and you can quantify the cost, incremental cost that companies have to incur to set up with all this disclosure infrastructure. But if you looked at the compliance regime as an opportunity to change processes within your company, to review business operations, it could actually be an opportunity for productivity enhancement for the long term. So that's the tricky part of the conversation. So how do you get people to reflect on what they've been doing and see what they've been doing in a different way to open doors to new opportunities? And the problem is that most people on boards, it's human nature, their self-perception is that they're doing the right thing. So it's a very delicate conversation. So you have to have an openness of mind and say, okay, let's reflect on what we've been doing through a different lens and hopefully arrive at a conclusion that opens up the mind and therefore doors to new pathways.
There's a timing issue here, once again, isn't there? Because when you look at boards and the decisions, the strategic decisions that they have to make, you look at governments and the regulatory changes that they need to make, and these are changing so rapidly. Technology, Ahmed, as you're so well aware, is changing so incredibly quickly. How do you stay ahead of these trends? I mean, we're particularly talking, of course, about impact here, but the question remains, how do you stay ahead?
Technology will always outpace regulation. So it's very challenging to say, as regulatory bodies, to say how to kind of, you can adapt, you can be flexible and open. I think that's the most you can ask, and be progressive as and when these changes come to adopt. Again, very close to the ecosystem here, but I tell you that the UAE has among the most progressive regulatory systems in the sense that it's very close to its ecosystem, its community, it hears them out, and it wants to make sure it develops. And that's proven by the fact that we've had a Ministry of Climate Change since for the longest time. We've had Masdar doing clean tech investing for more than 15 years, a total of $40 billion just invested in clean energy. So we've always had this kind of progressive mindset around it. And I think the most we can ask for is being open, being flexible, listening to these, creating the right type of environment, sandboxes to allow for these technologies to proliferate. Now, it's back to the gap that we talked about. It's actually adoption. There's no, the way I see it in the globe today, there's no lack of recognition of what the issues are. There is a bit of slowdown in adoption, right? Because if you only think about the widespread application on climate tech or clean tech solution, I can think of as electric vehicles. I see a lot of them popping up. Solar, I guess solar solutions are widespread depending on the jurisdiction, not the sole provider of solutions. I think for us, it's really, it's a culture change. It's thinking through, okay, how can we make these solutions a big part of how we operate. But I also want to touch upon a point you mentioned, Rajiv, which is our definition of return. We talked about our definition of impact. Return in the financial sense, for all of you who've done finance, is your return, commercial, money in, out, P&L, etc. We're working Hub 71. I believe we are an impact initiative because we're here to build an ecosystem, support startups, build a community around it, get money circulated into the Abu Dhabi economy through this environment. For me, this is return. This is impact. This is supporting an ecosystem. This is a multiplier effect. So if we can also adopt and refine the definition of return and what impact is, you'll be surprised that a lot of us are actually into the impact space.
You are an ecosystem builder, in essence, at Hub 71. So it's an area of your expertise. It's not something that everybody finds very easy. Collaboration is difficult, right?
No, actually, collaboration is maybe because I've been part of Mubadala from the longest time. It's an ethos of how we run. So it actually comes natural to us. We're not very good at doing things. Well, no, we can't execute things on our own, but we love partnering with people. Helps validate your ideas, supports, work towards the same objectives, share incentives, and that's just natural to people. We're social beings. We want to kind of collaborate where objectives align. Ecosystem building is not easy, but if you partner just for the sake of, oh, we have great logos with us, you'll never get anywhere. When you bring in people towards a shared mission, for example, what we've launched around COP28 late last year, Hub 71 plus Climate Tech, bringing in ADNOC as a founding partner, partnering with Siemens Energy, Taqa, Masdar, 5 out of the 25 partners we partnered there. They didn't partner because it's, oh, we want to be part of this. No, they partnered because Hub 71, you're building an ecosystem concentrated on climate tech solutions. We want to be part of this journey. You're defining a value proposition for Abu Dhabi, for technology out of the UAE, and we want to be part of that story. I'm humbled. I get goosebumps just saying this. We didn't do it by purpose. We just set the objectives, and we would love for you to be part of what is this mission. When you said that, we get always humbled by the amount of people, partners that want to be part of the same story.
It's sort of similar, Ken, to what you were talking about earlier when it's coming to bringing people together. And you are wearing so many hats, as you've just been talking about. So thank you for being here today. I'm glad you had the time. But in all seriousness, you are wearing so many hats. You've experienced this from the public sector, from the private sector, from academia. What is the answer here for those that aren't as experienced as Ahmed?
The answer to partnerships?
Yeah.
Well, one is, I believe, having a common language. And to me, like public-private sector initiatives are fine, but if you think about it, the private sector is always looking for, in any initiative, partnership, sales, profits. And the government comes in, and what they spend a lot of time on is actually the budgeting process. But once the budget's there, they assume it's going to be done. And so, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that's sort of the mismatch I see. And so this concept of impact, which is a very nice word, and we use the word impact metrics. What does it actually mean? Is it an output? Is it an outcome? It's still rather messy in a sense. But if we come up with this common language and impact, I think that'll align the private sector, the for-profit and non-profit, with the government. And so the initiative, going back to my work with Triple I for Global Health, this is all about partnerships. This is a partnership with the GSG, the GENE, the Gates Foundation, and it started out with a G7 endorsement, but obviously G20 all around the world, and we need partners to get this done. And so at the launch event in September, we had, I believe, 37. Currently, we have 65. And I see potential partners all around this, in this conference room. But it's building this common language in global health, which to me is the foundation for any prosperity. Health is the prosperity and well-being of any society, whether it's this region, Africa, Asia, Japan, Europe, or United States, right? And so our mission in this Triple I is to bring that together, these like-minded people. We have 3 pillars. One is to convince people that this is something that should be done. It's using the convening power of the Triple I and the G7, all this. The second part is the important part is this impact measurement. What does it actually mean? There's a lot of interesting work being done already, but trying to come up with the harmonization, one sort of, well, not this one, sorry, but just this common language, best practices. And the third is partnerships with the private sector and government. How do we move forward impact investing in global health? And just one last point is, according to the GENE, I guess the impact investment market in 2022, according to their number, was like $1.1 trillion, of which healthcare was 9%, which either tells me it's a growth opportunity or it's being neglected. And I see it as a growth opportunity because usually when you think of healthcare, and public health, it's seen as a cost. But if it's a cost, it's sales to somebody else, which is a growth strategy. So to me, this global health is a growth strategy for a sustainable, society globally.
So when we're talking about impact and impact investing, health is where you'd be looking. So if there are investors listening today.
Please, come to me.
Rajiv, what are your thoughts on that? On the investment opportunities when we're looking at impact as we stand today.
Investment opportunities, that just, climate is the obvious one, health, education, financial inclusion. But these are just categories. I just wanted to make a broader point, which is that no matter what business you're doing, right, there is scope to actually convert it into an impact business. So let's not categorize this is impact business or this is an impact sector and that is not. Everything can be impactful. It depends on how you approach it.
And I think that's, to your point, that's almost exactly what you were saying earlier on.
Definitely. And again, maybe I'll draw my example at being part of Mubadala for more than 10 years. It's been so embedded in everything we did. From a great example I love to use is building out Strata, aerospace structure manufacturing facilities out in Al-Ain. Most of the employees there, that's a lot. I figure that cuts a lot of people by surprise. Is 80% female. Most of them on the shop, on the ground. For me, yes, it's an impact business easily. Creating also a cluster around manufacturing to the leading OEMs in the world. So it starts from everything. But when it comes to investment opportunities, now there's a global, I guess the global trend has been over last year that's, I think, correcting a bit this year, is that there has been a bit of curtailment in just deploying capital around the VC in general. And climate tech, just given its specialist solutions and given how people are thinking about it, it's a bit more nascent compared to other sectors. Fintech, I would say, is also seeing that. But there are great investment opportunities that are coming up. If anything, actually, this is the key thing. People are more inclined to deploy capital into businesses that demonstrate impact on top of financial returns. It's no longer enough to do, oh, I have this great business. Obviously, if we're going to make 100 times my money, I'll look at it. But if most businesses would be like 20, 30% IRR. But then we would see is like, what's the impact you would generate? What are the things you're going to bring to an economy, an ecosystem like ours at Hub 71?
Now, I just wanted to take a step back slightly and pick up on a point that Ken made earlier. You know, when I was at the AVPN conference last year, fantastic conference, as is this one, but one of the questions that was raised over and over again, to your point, Ken, was what measurement are we using? How are we measuring this? We've just been talking about the changing trends and how quickly things are changing in this environment. So Rajiv, what are you telling your boards when they're asking you, you know, you're asking us to make these changes, but how do we measure our success?
So there's a lot of interesting, innovative work that has been happening on measurement of impact. And I think that AI actually is going to fundamentally change methodologies for how we are actually going to be able to capture and value impact. So, but that's still a little while away. For now, it's a question of quantifying in a very simple but methodical manner, purposeful goals that go beyond just the standard reporting systems that we've been used to. I think the businesses need to reflect on what is their purpose and then capture that in very, very simple metrics without overcomplicating it right now. That's my simple advice.
Well, on that point, I think that's a fantastic place to wrap it up. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for a fabulous, fabulous panel today.
Thank you. Let us thank His Highness Sheikh Thiab bin Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan for being with us today. We will now break for a quick coffee break. There is an MOU signing happening at the One Asia stage by one of our main partners, Zayed Charitable and Humanitarian Foundation. During the coffee break, you can go and spend some time there. If you want to know more about impact investing, please visit the AVPN Hub today. Our impact investing team will be present there, and they would love to have a conversation with you. While you are at the Hub, there are two other initiatives of AVPN that are being showcased there. First is the Social Investment in Action Dashboard. This provides interactive data about financial and non-financial capital flows by AVPN members. The second is the Impact Collab, a revolutionary outcomes-based social investing system. We will break for lunch, for a coffee now. We will come back at 11, and we'll start at 11:10 sharp. Everyone to please come forward and fill up the seats in the front. We'll start shortly.
here today, we recognize the immense potential that lies in our diverse continent and the pivotal role that philanthropy and social investment play in shaping our future.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to AVPN Conference 2024, One Asia, One Future, delivered in partnership with the United Arab Emirates Presidential Courts International Humanitarian and Philanthropic Council, under the patronage of His Highness Sheikh Thiab bin Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Let us continue our impact investing journey, and I'm honored to invite on stage our keynote speaker, His Excellency Ahmad Jasim Al-Zabi, a member of the Abu Dhabi Executive Council and chairman of the Abu Dhabi Department of Economic Development.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Abu Dhabi, home to talent, investments, and philanthropic endeavors. It is with immense pleasure that the 11th AVPN Global Conference takes place here in Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi has long been steadfast in its commitment to enhancing the social impact of its investments, firmly embracing sustainable and responsible practices. By joining forces with Asian investors and entrepreneurs, we can collectively tackle shared concerns and global challenges, charting a course towards a better future. Our investments are helping growth across 122 countries and 35 diverse sectors, with substantial investments of nearly $45 billion in renewable energy. This reflects our commitment to sustainability and reaffirms our position as a global leader of investments that help other countries to grow and prosper. The initiatives of the Department of Economic Development are guiding Abu Dhabi's economy to soar to new heights and be more diverse than ever. One of the major economic contributors is the achievements of Abu Dhabi Global Market, the international financial center of the UAE's capital city. ADGM has been at the forefront of bringing impactful capital flow to the Emirate and has been positioning Abu Dhabi as a destination of choice for some of the leading international asset and fund managers that call Abu Dhabi a place to live, work, and thrive. Hub 71, Abu Dhabi's global tech ecosystem, is also paving the way for greater and impactful investment opportunities. Entrepreneurs from around the world have chosen Abu Dhabi as a launchpad to grow and scale their cutting-edge technologies. Over 200 startups operating in key economic sectors, including health tech, climate tech, and fintech, are using their technologies to shape a more sustainable and resilient future for communities and industries. Abu Dhabi's ascendance as an entrepreneurial hub has been remarkable, and the UAE's capital tech ecosystem growth has been recognized as the sixth fastest globally in the year 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, Abu Dhabi has been a powerful catalyst for change, paving way for a future where responsible investing is the norm, not the exception. Abu Dhabi is ready to lead the way. Let's make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for the inspiring words. Moving on to our next session. COP28 was held just a few months back in Dubai. AVPN had the privilege to participate at the event, and the team proudly contributed towards the dialogues on blended finance. The next session will delve into sustainable alternatives and the need to bridge the funding. To moderate the session, please join me in welcoming Ms. Komal Sahu, Chief of Sustainable Finance at AVPN. And on the panel, I invite Mr. Samir Suleymanov, Director of Finance at COP28 Secretariat, Ms. Sophia Cheng, Chief Investment Officer, Cathay Financial Holdings and Chair at the Asia Investor Group on Climate Change, Mr. Varat Pandey, Partner and Director at Boster Consulting Group.
Thank you everyone for being here. I was one of those fortunate people to be at COP, and Samir mentioned something earlier that very much resonates with us. UAE believes in go big or go home, and that's what we witnessed at COP. There were over 100,000 people there. There was lots of initiatives, commitments, and agreements reached, and there was a UAE consensus that was signed on by 198 different parties to COP. And one of the things that did do was we heard the success, it signaled the success of COP, which was, it was a beginning at the end of the fossil fuel era. And I think this is why the panelists we've got here today, and they were all involved at COP in some way or another, they have a lot to contribute. We also heard earlier today from the Deputy CEO, Group CEO of Mubadala talking about the necessity of transition finance and how transition finance is going to be critical for us to transition to a net zero economy in Asia as a whole. I'm fortunate to have Samir with us. Samir, can you tell us the role you played and you have continued to play with respect to climate finance and mobilizing climate finance with view to tackling climate challenges?
Yeah. Me, you mean personally or as a COP28? I mean,
both. I believe you've been involved with both.
I was in charge of basically developing the finance agenda for COP28, and we delivered what delivered at COP, and now we are, of course, in the year of presidency, but now there is an upcoming COP29 presidency, so we are sort of operationalizing, and we'll get into some of this stuff, I guess, what has been delivered, and gradually transitioning the leadership of some of those issues at the global stage to the new presidency.
Wonderful. And I also believe, Samir, you've been involved as a deputy CEO of the World Bank over the years and have had lots to do with deploying into climate finance projects. We're fortunate to have Sophia here, who wears two hats, as the chair of AIGCC, as well as the CIO for Cathay Financial Holdings. So, Sophia, tell us a little bit about your work and the work you've been doing for AIGCC, as well as for Cathay.
Thank you. My name is Sophia Cheng. I'm the Chief Investment Officer of Cathay Financial Holdings. Cathay Financial Holdings is one of the largest financial group in Taiwan, with total asset under management close to $400 billion, of which 60% is in insurance, about 40% in banking. We are very early in responsible investment, ESG, climate actions, and now we are exploring into the impact investment area. In commercial insurance, our market share is about 20%, but on microinsurance, our market share is about 30%. I'm very honored to be heading the group responsible investment since 2014, and we joined a lot of initiatives, including Climate Action 100+, TCFD, Value Water Investment Initiative, Asia Utility Engagement Program, and we are also early signatories into Business for Nature, Nature Action 100+. So there's a lot more to do and also a lot more to learn. And since 2018, we have done the carbon footprinting for our portfolio because we commit to net zero by 2050. And it's very important we engage with our investee companies and borrowers. They also do net zero transition so we can ensure our portfolio can reach the target. We also work together with Asia investors on global initiative, including the PRI Week. For example, last year in October, there were steel companies. This hard-to-abate sector also needs help. So I'm very honored that we can contribute and we can lead. Thanks.
And Varad, at BCG, I mean, clearly you're working with a number of clients who are focused on, I guess, looking at the urgency of climate action and what is needed for us to stay within the 1.5-degree target. Please tell us about the work you're doing.
Thank you, Komal, and thank you to AVPN for this fantastic platform and to the UAE for hosting us. I'm Bharat Pandey. I'm a partner and director at the Boston Consulting Group. We're an advisory firm that works on a range of issues. Climate and sustainability is a very, very critical priority for us as an organization. We were privileged to be the principal strategy partner to the COP28 presidency. I had the pleasure of working with Samir and his colleagues in that context. And in my personal background, I worked on climate finance from different lenses. I worked in a government. I worked at the World Bank. The role of multilateral development banks is very important in this discourse. And now great to be here to be seeing it from a particular lens. I just want to say one more thing, Komal, which is you mentioned the trajectory and net zero and so on. But I think climate finance is much more than just mitigation. I think it's very important we also put focus on adaptation and resilience. We put importance on nature, because ultimately we're trying to solve the problem of planetary boundaries that we are beginning to exceed. And we can come to that when we speak.
Absolutely. Samir, you were deeply involved with COP28, and I'm sure there's a bias there, but how do you think it performed? And do you think it was enough to get to where we need to go?
Yeah, I think it was enough so far. I mean, it's a long, long journey, of course. I just returned from the spring meetings of the World Bank and IMF in Washington. This was the first time where I saw the whole crowd on finance side, at least, that came to COP28. And I think the biggest impression that I came back with, the validation by that entire crowd that this was in fact unprecedented COP in terms of not only, and I can go in terms of specifically what it has delivered, but in terms of like I'm quoting like very senior people saying game changer, brought new narrative, brought optimism. This is the type of reactions I heard, and these are from the heads of multilateral organizations and other senior, again, leadership in this field. And I think that was the biggest achievement. Not sure if any other country than the UAE could pull it off, to be honest, because I think it also, the way it played, it reflects the way UAE has developed and the place for the country that it is right now in the world. I think we managed to basically convey that energy to the COP outcomes in a way. So it was tremendously successful. Again, I'm keeping that at the very, very top level in terms of people leaving COP28 and saying there is a lot happening and there is a, we don't have to focus on cataclysmic kind of narratives all the time. And it's very interesting also, my daughter has been sharing with me a lot of articles right now in the media, and there are now people write about this stuff. There is a name for it, impatient optimism and apocalyptic optimism. Not necessarily, I'm not saying they say COP28 did it, but there is a whole sentiment which was very small, but it's growing, and I think COP28 played a big role, that too much negative and too much, focusing too much on pessimistic kind of view of the future doesn't enable any action. If you are a young person, and I have kids who are many generations, ex-millennials, whatever they call, then you resort to no action, basically. So, and I think that was the main thing of COP, honestly. And then we can go into what exactly has it done, but putting the conversation in that light, that we are where we are in the history of the world, but there are ways to go about this from now on, where the future, again, maybe not very easy, not rosy, but there is a better future to build, both for the planet, but also for the market system and for economy and for the development of the poorer nations, actually.
Varad, we've heard Samir talk about this analysis paralysis and obviously the fear that people have and take no action as a result, thinking that all is hopeless and lost and we're bound to be doomed. So, yourselves as BCG, you clearly have a role to play as a non-state actor in this conference of parties. What do you think? What is that role? How do you take people out of that fear?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. And let me just offer firstly a few reflections on COP28, building on what Samir was saying. I think, firstly, we assessed that about $85 billion of new commitments on climate finance were made at COP28, which I think is a remarkable achievement. The UAE itself announced many things, including a fund called Altera, with a $30 billion commitment, aiming to raise another $250 billion of catalytic capital. There was also a UAE declaration on climate finance, which lays down the principles of how we need to move forward on this agenda. And in addition to the negotiating track, where we got the UAE consensus, there was a very active track called the Action Agenda, which is where the non-state actors actually played a very important role. And I think the recognition that it's not just governments and negotiations which will solve this problem. It will need a multidimensional approach of everybody coming together and contributing that is needed to solve the problem. I think that was an important marker of the COP28 achievements. I think climate finance, maybe just to speak on that a little bit, the problem, even though we've made fantastic strides in the last few years, including COP28, the problem is we are still 5 times more capital is needed than we currently raise for climate finance, right? So we are raising as a world around $1 trillion a year now for climate finance. We need $3 to $5 trillion every year from now till 2050. So the challenge ahead, just the aggregate number itself, there is a lot more to be done. That's problem number one. Problem number two is the allocation of that capital. So 70 to 80% of the climate capital today goes to decarbonize the energy systems, which of course is very important, but there are other aspects of mitigation which are getting underfunded. For example, we need to decarbonize what are called the hard to abate sectors, cement, steel, aluminum. We need investments in those. We need to decarbonize our food system, agriculture, major emitter, agriculture and livestock. So we need more capital to go into that. So there's an allocation issue as well. The third, as I said, is the focus. 90% of capital is going to mitigation, which is of course very important. But as we are getting locked into the challenges of climate change, 2 degrees Celsius probably going to be very hard to meet. Extreme weather events are becoming more and more common, and we saw what happened in Dubai earlier last week as an example, but that kind of thing is rising all over the world. So we need to be prepared as a world and invest much more in adaptation and resilience investments to make our infrastructure, to make our communities much more able to deal with the new world we will have to deal with, right? So the allocation to adaptation and resilience, unfortunately, is still less than 10% of the total climate finance. And then lastly, I think the global south is getting less than 10% of the capital today. And if you think about it, global south is where there is the massive opportunity, because a lot of the infrastructure in the global south, in countries of Asia, is yet to be built. And if we can build it in a low carbon way, if we can build it in a resilient way, we don't have to retrofit as many of the countries of the West or the global north have to do. We can actually build in a resilient and low carbon way. So I think these are the dimensions of the problem we need to solve. And as I said, it will only happen through collective action. I think Sameer's point that while some amount of cataclysmic thinking and fear is good to shake us all up, we need to see this as an opportunity and come to it from a solution-making mindset, which is increasingly important.
So Sophia, Varad's pointed out the amount that needs to be, close to $5 trillion if we're going to get to and on an annual basis to get to 2050. You're a capital allocator. You have, as you mentioned, 400 billion there in an allocation capacity. What are you doing as an organization? And also you speak on behalf of AIGCC, which is made up of institutional investors. How are you thinking about how you allocate capital to addressing not just the energy transition part, but also the adaptation, the mitigation, the resilience?
Okay, I can echo the two speakers. They mentioned about COP28. I was here and I was so impressed. It's so big. And after walking whole day, I was like, how did it die? My legs very painful. And it was so fruitful. It is so hard to challenge. It has a record high number of stakeholders. And something touched me was in COP26, when I was in Glasgow, there were some financial institutions that to participate. But this time you can see so many financial institutions, they are keen to learn what are the areas they can contribute. So I think that's great. And for COP28, if you asked about Asia Investor Grant Climate Change. Sorry, I forgot to introduce. We gather about 70 members already to do training, education, investor action together to engage our investee companies to move for decarbonization. And the AIGCC was launched in 2016. We were one of the 8 original founding members, and since 2018, I became the chairperson. And so we participate a lot in working together on a lot of engagement programs in Asia. And the past 2 years, with the increase from climate to biodiversity, deforestation to nature, there are also a lot of progress in this. So we really welcome financial institutions to join us and to have the collaboration together. From capital allocation, if I can highlight what I saw from COP28, there was a very impatient voice. Where is the money? And I remember in the old days, I can say no ESG, no money. but from how the South and the island countries were asking, can developed market accelerate the funding? And the COP28 was very fast. Upfront, they have the initial loss and funds, damage and loss funds. Despite the amount is not enough, but I think it was a very good start. And so from no ESG, no money, I start to feel the pressure from these emerging countries that no money, no ESG, no climate actions. And I just come back from Palau to see a lot of sustainability projects. And I also find another problem is developed market always want to find project they can do carbon sink. So, but there's a tendency that you do the project for me, rather than whether the project is really needed by those South countries. So it's very important when we do a project, we should be considerate, standing from their shoes to think what really needs, rather than asking them to solve problems for us and we just pay the money. From COP28, I saw the global start take. It's very good that if we can do every 5 years a deep review into our progress, I think you will make the world more aligned together. And we also have an important voice on sector-specific incentives. We are seeing some commitment to phase down fossil fuel. And UAE also have made a commitment to triple the renewable energy. I think these are all worth observing. And then there is one more thing I want to highlight is when we talk about where is the money, I think I found a very big missing point is many projects, they are not ready for funding. They may be too light in preparation information, or they don't have a proper governance framework. And for global investor, if we go to a market where less familiar, who can help to manage or supervise this project will be quite critical. But today we are seeing more blended finance, multi-development banks, development funds are helping. So if we have a better information platform, helping people to know where are the projects, where the project can also see where are the money, I think that will be very good. So I will be very keen to see some project platforms that we can evaluate directly. And then we are seeing a lot of some more blended finance cases. They prove to be successful. And I really hope that we can spend more energy to explore what they are, how they get it right, and try to localize into our region and country. And the last point I want to highlight is so many projects they need help to make this project bankable and investable. They all go to the wrong money. For example, wrong place for funding. For example, if they are quite early, it doesn't work if you help them to go to a bank. They should go to angel and venture capital. So they need some knowledge, mentoring them at what stage, what money match their current status. And they also need mentoring, helping them to have a proper business proposal and how to design the ecosystem and making sure the public sector money can leverage into the private sector can also join.
Thank you. Samir, I wanted to talk about, COP26 enshrined a just and equitable transition. And we are still at a stage where we are still looking at developing economies. What role do you see the UAE playing in making sure that the rest of Asia can also benefit and enable this just and equitable transition to happen in developing economies in Asia?
Thank you. You said COP26, not responsible for that one. So,
but COP28,
we'll stick to the 28.
Yeah. COP28 established and reinforced it.
I think some of the things have been said. What is His Excellency Ahmed Jassim said at the end of his speech that we need to make sure responsible investing becomes a norm, not an exception. Ultimately, and as we were concluding COP28, I think the COP28 president, Dr. Sultan, in his main kind of address to on finance to the audience, the speech was focused actually that climate and development are same issues. Like the climate considerations cannot be impediments to growth. And I think the main answer to your question is in that concept that we cannot stop development and developing countries especially. They're not responsible for any of the damages that caused. So we need to find pathways for development which are consistent. Maybe it's safer to say with the resource constraints of the world, right? If you say consistent with climate scenarios, even people then jump up and down some. But ultimately we're talking about just development in a way, like the access to resources and technologies to build better functioning economic systems, stronger market economies, and increasing incomes basically at country level. So countries have to grow and the resources are constrained. And it's not just oxygen as a resource, let's say, linked to CO2, I mean, but water, right, the forests. So we have a, so the question is how do you do that type of development, right? And I think Sophia mentioned, so when she was talking about doing projects that countries need, not the project that solve the rich country problems in other countries. I think it's a similar concern, right? So ultimately it's about smart development. And maybe this conversation was not, maybe it's becoming ripe right now because there are now technologies who actually can allow you to do it. So that's why I'm personally staying very optimistic because the way I look at it personally is like, okay, we have gone through certain phases of history. Now we have polluted and cut a lot of forests, unfortunately, but we also have developed a lot of technologies which can actually now make the next industrial phase much more climate consistent, let's say. We're talking about water resource agriculture, synthetic fertilizers, resistant seeds, carbon capture in industry, making things out of CO2 which are clean fuels, for example, out of CO2. There is an amazing amount of fascinating stuff out there. And this can, when I meet the countries or businesses from developing countries, I actually try to convince them that it's a good chance for them. Not to get into debate of the climate, science and all the stuff at this point. Literally run as fast as they can in terms of adopting these technologies and building more competitive, technology-driven economies, with smart jobs and all. And this is not rhetorics. I think you said it very well that you don't have the issue of the legacy systems in these countries. You don't have to change things, right? So you can build industry which is decarbonized. You can actually do it, and you would be much more competitive. So that's how, and then basically if you take that as a concept, everything that we have done on the COP28 with UAE's leadership was to push that narrative and put specific instruments on the table that can actually make it happen. We did our part. I mean, others have to do their parts, of course. There are MDBs, there are other private initiatives. I don't want to go through this again, but we created the largest dedicated climate fund, which is Altera. There is no such thing in the world. And again, this goes back to Mr. Jassim's statement that it has to be normal. Like climate investment has to be a normal investment. We should gradually wash the boundaries between like finance and climate finance as if it will always remain a little universe on its own. That makes no sense. The whole finance has to invest into better future, which is climate financing in a way, ultimately. So there is Altera, and then we had a large program in Africa, which grew into green industrialization concept, which is still under implementation. We created a center, which will push the strategies on this type of investments under ADGM. And then the banks, UAE banks came together, committed 2 trillion dirhams for green banking by 2030. Enormous amount of initiatives, all focused exactly on this outcome. How to push, how to offer a positive and strong narrative for private sector to invest in such transition and do our part, put the instruments on the table actually which can be utilized for that.
Can I add a couple of things to what Samir said, because it's a really important topic. So 2 things. One, I'll say that, so I used to be a climate negotiator 12 years back, and I think the dynamic of that discussion has changed dramatically since that time. I remember it was more like, the developed countries and developing countries arguing over, it's not our fault, don't ask us to pay, how much money can you give us? all of that stuff. Now, some of that stuff still stays in the negotiations, but what's changed is I think now countries are seeing the green transition as an opportunity. And we as an BCG has written a piece recently, which you can see on our website, on the idea of green industrial policy and how different countries are following the path of green industrial policy, set of incentives and nudges and programs to really attract investments in renewable, in hydrogen, in CCUS, in all these technologies, because it's now the next frontier of competitiveness, as opposed to a risk only, right? So we are seeing a lot of demand from countries. We are doing projects with countries on helping define green FDI strategies. So how do you attract foreign direct investment with a green lens? What does it take? What can we learn from others? So that whole change has happened in a big way today, which I think gives me a lot of hope, especially from the point of view of Asia and developing countries, number one. Number two, I wanted to say the term just transition has now sort of come into vogue as well in the climate discourse. It means different things to different people. But I think it's very important, I think something you said, communities have to be put at the heart of this transition and have to be made not just recipients, but stakeholders in the decision making. I think if you think about the elements of an equitable or just transition, we need to think about the fact that there are people who will lose out in the transition. So we need new concepts of green reskilling. We need to think of green safety nets for people who will lose out. And we need to think about the fact that in some cases, the cost of goods and services will go up, at least in the short term, whether you're investing, MSMEs investing in energy efficiency, whether it's cost of transport, if there is carbon tax, etc. And so we need to make sure that those who are the least able to fund these have adequate support so that the transition works for everyone and not just for a few. And in that context, I did want to make a pitch for a workshop tomorrow afternoon, which BCG and ABPN are co-hosting on the topic of equitable green transitions. It's a project we are hoping to kick off tomorrow as a joint project over the year, where we'll really try and unpack this whole term equitable green transitions and what does it mean for Asia and what are the actions we can take to make it happen.
I also want to do a plug. We have another workshop which is on climate finance and impact measurement, and how do we measure the impact of what we're doing for climate finance, because we obviously know there's multiple dimensions to it, including, I think, the most challenging that again stops people from getting into it is scope 3, which they're having to grapple their way through. Sophia, adding to Varad's point, what are you as an institution? I know that you recently deployed in 2022, 10 billion towards low carbon investments. What do you do as an institution to make sure that your investments also incorporate this point about just transition?
Except cash and derivatives. The others, 100% ESG integration, responsible investment. Our external manager, fund manager, manage our fund. Also need to answer a question on ESG and how their climate actions. As of now, we start to do the statistics on our low carbon investment since 2014. Today, we have roughly 10 billion US in low carbon investment. If I add infrastructure, financial inclusion, microinsurance, microfinance, and also water resource, all the related, roughly it's about close to 55 billion US dollar already. So to echo what Samir is saying, that actually, eventually, it's just an investment. To me, climate change, ESG, social impact is part of our culture and belief. It should not be a product. Okay? And every year, we will think what else we can do. Sometimes, if you cannot give them money yet, can you help them on capacity building? Yeah, because if they don't qualify, we don't qualify. And if you think about 100 years ago, when we started to form the banking industry, the purpose was a bank was to collect the money surplus to the money needed and grow them from a SME into a great company. Every great company starts with a tiny. But today, with the lower interest rate, things spread, and the avoid of risk, we tend to please the large companies where ignore what SME may need. So I do think we need to think more innovative infrastructure to bring people together, private sector and the government. For our investment, our chairman also care about society a lot. And I think the climate change is science. Investment is also science. And so it's not just about green. And as we hear from other speakers, we can see how fast these new technology are emerging. At the meantime, money can flow globally. So today, I think it's bigger and bigger stress for financial institutions. Rather than waiting for visitors, we need to proactively look for possible opportunities, work together with the project, and help them to shape the plan. Yeah, so I found it more meaningful than just doing the asset allocation.
So Varad, again, picking up on what Sophia has said, I mean, you're working with clients directly on the energy transition piece, on the transition finance, on the net zero piece, and also, I assume, some aspects of blended finance as well. What do you see in the market at the moment that's enabling this?
Yeah, no, I think I see a lot of interest in blended finance. I think there is appetite of all kinds of investors. And I think it's time for us to take a green financing stack approach, by which I mean we need to bring the best of different types of capital together to really move the needle here, right? So if you break it down, there's the government, and government capital will always be very important. There are certain things only governments can fund, early stage incentives, early stage research and development, and really coming in as catalytic in some of the new initiatives that are being put together. So that's the government. The second category are, I think we didn't get a chance to talk about in great detail, but development finance institutions and multilateral development banks who really sit at this crossroad. They are in many cases largely funded by countries of the global north, but their mandate is to advance development. And they have deep trust, I think, having worked in countries over the last 50 to 70 years. They have teams on the ground, deep trust. Can they play a catalytic role in bringing not just their balance sheet, but using that to open the balance sheet of private investors in emerging markets? So very important role. The third is impact investors, more broadly speaking, who can bring in higher risk tolerance and more patient timelines than traditional commercial investors. They have a very important role. And lastly, I'll say philanthropy and foundations. I mean, their money, of course, is worth its weight in gold because it has, as I say, the nimbleness of commercial capital. It's more nimble than government capital, and it's more patient than commercial capital. So that coming in as the last layer of the stack to really make some of these things happen is really important. I think we are seeing a lot of green shoots on blended finance, but we are not seeing the kind of scale that we want to see. And I think a lot of work needs to be done on creating standardized templates of facilities, funds, and deals, so that these things can scale in a much faster way. Because as I said in the beginning, we are off by a factor of 5 in how much money we need, and we have no time to waste.
Absolutely. And I think at AVPN, we are very focused on the blended finance piece. We're obviously at a much smaller scale, but we are thinking through what we can do to bring philanthropists together. Many of them are in the room today, and also facilitate collaboration amongst commercial actors, impact funds, family foundations, plus the DFIs who are here to see what we can do to put together, products for blended finance. So Samir, you're going to be handing over the baton to COP29. You're going to have your counterpart there. What do you hope to see as achievements? How do you see that translating to COP29?
Ironically or incidentally, I'm actually Azerbaijanian, so I'm passing it to myself in some way. So, and my mom thinks I did that COP29 is in Azerbaijan. But I can't explain to her that no, it doesn't work that way. But she's like, no, I know you did it. So, it is actually very fortunate. I mean, first of all, I think it's for the first time we have UAE, Azerbaijan, Brazil, 3 developing countries in 3 consecutive COPs, which is why we formed the Troika. to ensure some consistency in the policy, because historically COPs have gone like a train ride. Stop, go, and then you arrive, you get off, and then there is another ride, other people get in, and it's very choppy. Right? Well, and all this stuff is complex. They need longer-term conversations. So try to address it. These three presidencies is a lucky coincidence. So there will be institution of Troika to coordinate. That put aside, it is also astonishing that Azerbaijan and UAE are so close in terms of the economic model, regional proximity, cultural background, and also mindset on this issue, which is very pro-growth, to be honest, and it's a kind of economic growth driven. So going back to the just transition and all these issues. And it's a tremendous opportunity that way, so I'm sure there will be a lot of continuity. What I mentioned in the beginning, our biggest policy outcome on finance was this new climate finance framework, which was signed by most major economies. We have only a few signatories, 13 heads of state, but India, US, and half of it G7, so it was a very selected group of people. It's a policy statement which says, yes, we need trillions every year to go to climate. There is no one institution will fix it. It requires a mosaic of things, right? So we created this map. It's a framework of 10 principles. Literally, imagine a table with 10 boxes, and the statement says if all these boxes move in the right direction, we will close this finance gap. And everything is there, from looking into new sources of finance like taxation, carbon markets, private investments, etc. And what UAE delivered was actually part of that framework in a way, and we again focused on private entrepreneurship and equity-driven finance, which we thought was the biggest thing lacking in the system. So in terms of the transition to COP28, I think it's that framework, because it's not UAE's framework. We helped reach an agreement on it, but our main hope is that that framework carries on to COP29, then to 30 in some form. And all the stakeholders actually report on the basis of that framework. How do we measure them? We're developing now the metric to literally look back, every now and then and say there were 10 principles, certain commitments. How are we moving along those commitments? And if we institute that practice of accountability, who did what? I mean, there are things that IMF promised, the World Bank, other institutions, it's not just country actions. And then it would help, I hope, to stop discussing the same issues again and again. Because when you go to these international meetings, there are same topics most of the time, and then it's again debated, and then people make announcements. You don't know, did they already make this announcement? They're just repeating it. Like, you can't figure out because there are so many of them. Or is it even important? What does it mean? We did billion in something, and you're like, okay, some country makes an announcement. You can't understand it. So we now have a map which will be able to take all that reporting in a way and just show the progress, right? How is it moving? So that's the biggest policy outcome, and I hope it survives through the future COPs. Will help continue the same line of conversation, basically.
I think what Samir is saying is, enough of the talk, now let's do the walk. And so let's see the projects on the ground, let's see the checks being written, let's see the collaborations actually showing results on the ground, and I think that's where AVPN can play a fantastic role.
Looking forward to the transparency and accountability. Thank you to all the panelists. We're at time. We could continue this conversation for a lot longer, but thank you so much for your contributions.
The panelists, can you just wait for a photo, please? Thank you so much for a very enriching conversation covering a range of topics, and also the challenges towards achieving the transition for a sustainable future post-COP28 world. Let's move on to another interesting aspect of patient finance, patient capital. To tell us more about patient capital and the critical role it plays in impact investing, let me invite our next panel onto the stage. To moderate the session, may I invite Mr. Harvey Koh, Senior Advisor to the Catalytic Capital Consortium, Dalberg and FSG, and the Advisor to MasterCard Foundation. Until last year, he was also on the board of AVPN. Joining him on the panel are Mr. Y. Chu Chik, CEO and Executive Director of Haritas Capital, Ms. Archana Srivatsan, Head of South and Southeast Asia VC, Strategic Investment Fund at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Mr. Sandeep Aneja, Founder and Managing Partner of Kaizen Capital Management.
Great, thank you so much, and welcome everyone. Good morning. I wasn't expecting to say that, but we're actually 6 minutes early. So we're moving now into our session on patient capital and its role in impact investing. It's a topic that's very close to my heart, and we'll go into that, why it's so important. But to discuss this, we've got a great panel here today. I think what's really great about the panel is not only are these really insightful leaders in the field, but also they represent a very diverse array of institutions, right? You've got the Gates Foundation, where Archana's from, which is one of the world's largest foundations. Archana leads the Strategic Investment Fund, the VC South Asia strategy at the SIF. So a large foundation. We've got Sandeep Aneja at Kaizenvest, which is an impact manager based in Singapore, but working actually across a number of continents. And then we've got Wai Chu from Heritas, which is a family office based in Singapore. And so I think to have these perspectives from different kinds of investors, all interested in, all active in patient capital, I think is going to be really a rich discussion today. So before we dive into questions, I guess I'll just start by saying patient capital. You know, what is the point of patient capital and what do we mean by it? And I guess when I think about it, it's really about the willingness to tailor capital to the needs and demands we see from the demand side, right? It's saying, instead of coming in with our rigid expectations as investors, you know, and just going by our requirements, our expectations, and sticking doggedly to those, we're actually going to look at what the entrepreneurs need, what do the enterprises need, what do the communities need, right, to serve that impact. And let's meet that need where it is. And if it means taking more time, being more patient for things to grow, develop, scale, exit, let's take that time. If it means, you know, being more flexible on other things, risk return, investment structures, unusual terms, unconventional terms, right? Let's consider those, right? So it's about meeting people and meeting the need where it is, rather than coming in with very fixed expectations. But that always raises the question, if you're going to depart from established norms and expectations in finance and investment, it raises the question of where are you going to move it to, right? Then you've got to define what it is that you're doing, how it is that you're doing it, because you're sort of going off the beaten path. So I think that's why, you know, it's really great for us to have this panel here today to talk about what that practice, that approach means for them in their own jobs and in their investing. And hopefully there'll be much for us to learn from all of that. So let me just dive in and start with you, Sandeep. Could you tell us about Kaizenvest, your areas of focus and your investment strategies, and how patient capital shows up in that?
Yeah, no, thank you, Harvey, and glad to be here. Thank you, AVPN, all the attendees. Good morning still. I'm Sandeep. I'm with Kaizenvest. I started it 12 years ago with the objective of solving for a social problem, which was to bring better quality education to India. That was a huge emerging challenge for us. It was a sector untested, and now we've expanded to investments in education in various parts of Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia, and also we're working with various not-for-profits, which enables us to be more patient in markets which are needing more developmental support, such as in sub-Saharan Africa. And we've changed our color from a private equity provider to a private credit provider in Africa, because that is the nature of patients we need to display there. So that's one dimension through which we have transitioned ourselves. So the way we think of us as the strategy we try to target is got a very deep solution orientation to it and a second partnership orientation to it. What does that mean? Solution orientation is either we solve a social problem or environmental problem, and there are two types. Very simplistic thought process, either an access problem or a market quality orientation problem. Those are the two things we can solve in the framework of our funds life cycles. So I'll be referring to those through this conversation, because access requires a different level of patience, quality requires a different level of patience, and then patience has numerous dimensions. So yeah, we are oriented towards solving social problems, environmental problems, but of these two different types. And we've learned a lot of lessons where patience has been the ultimate thing that we've created through a lot of transparency. And it's not just a noun, but it's also a verb to us, because it can be created through trust and transparency. So achievement of that requires alignment. But that's pretty much it, Harvey. So I thought we'll refer to a lot of this.
Could you give us an example, maybe, of where, where you've had this in a deal and that's exemplified these attributes?
Yeah, I think I'll go to an example that occurred during COVID, when all our patients was severely tested. And all of us, all our business plans and measures and timelines went out the window during COVID. And we didn't have access to our companies to sit next to them face to face to really understand. So we had to build trust over Zoom calls. We had to really understand what they were going through and empathetically get a sense for what their ultimate buyers were going through during these difficult times. One such company in the Philippines called FINMA, which provides higher education today to 150,000 learners in Southeast Asia, probably the largest provider. At that time, they had under 100,000 learners. And all the learners in the Philippines go to the larger cities generally to learn, and those who live there also move whatever it takes to pay the fees. But during COVID, the incomes were down. We were unable to collect fees. So FINMA had a choice to make. Either they could focus on fee collection and display no patience, or they could focus on going to the society and saying, we are with you in supporting your transition from a normal time to a very difficult time. We'll delay fee collections, but we'll support you with learning at home through devices. We'll send you home. We'll teach you through those devices. And this is a low-cost provider, $500 a year. So we had to absorb the cost as a company, reduce our profit margin by less than half. That was ultimate patience test for the investors. And we were super supportive. The reason we were super supportive is because we realized education is a social solution. If you, at any given time, do not serve a social cause, in the long run, you will be on the losing side. So by being patient, we were able to earn a great amount of trust with the society, so much so that 2 years since the pandemic, we've beaten our pre-COVID business plan, because FINMA's reputation went through the roof in its ability to support societal needs. So I think patience has to be sent through the pipe of LP, GP, and the underlying company and the ultimate customer. If you don't build that pipe of patience, then something somewhere will break and you won't achieve the desired result.
And I think probably everyone's got the question on their mind about how you align that with LPs, right, in particular, because they then need to be patient as well.
So Harvey, we were lucky. Our LPs are the likes of DFIs, ADB, Dutch FMO, BO, Proparco from France, and the various impact investors, because those investors have a desire to see the upliftment of employability in our markets. That helps the whole world, helps our own societies as well. So it was easier, and because the trust they had with us, that we would make the right decision on behalf of them, they would come to us and we'd convey to them the good news and the bad news. And therefore, that's ultimately, as I said, patience is a measure of trust. And trust is achieved through transparency, often transparency of the most difficult thing, which is to convey the bad news as soon as it is visible to you. And that's a hard thing to do. But
Great. Thanks so much, Sandeep. that point about alignment, I think, all the way through is so important. Wai Chu, if I could turn to you, could you tell us about Heritas and your approach? And I think one of the things that came out when we were discussing this before is you've been on a bit of an evolution, right, in terms of your investment approach, and you've actually gone sort of deeper over time into patient capital. So could you speak to us, talk to us about that?
Yeah, quick introduction. Heritas Capital is a Singapore-based investment management firm working with a lot of family offices to shape impact investing strategies. So as Harvey rightly mentioned, we have also gone through a number of transitions. This is our 10th year journey building an impact investment platform. We started with industry selection, right? Looking for industries where there is a good element of doing well and doing good, right? So we chose healthcare for a start and putting capital behind it. Bought a hospital in Kuching, Malaysia, where most people would not have heard of and couldn't fathom the investment case. But we saw that this is a place where we could serve a lot of underserved patients from Indonesia on the Borneo side. And then over the years, we transited from industry selection towards ESG integration. And then in a few short years, we went on to launch Impact Growth and Impact Venture funds. And then last year, we launched what we call an Impact First Fund. And that is, again, we deem as pretty catalytic because the whole Impact First category is pretty much untested. And it lies in the segment between impact investing and philanthropy. Right? So in Asia, we don't really see a lot of organized funds investing across Asia to support social enterprises who are very underserved in terms of funding options. So we decided to set it up. We were very blessed to have DBS Bank and the foundation of DBS Bank working very closely with us to look for suitable social enterprises to back. And as I mentioned earlier, a number of family offices with philanthropic track record actually came in with us on the first close to make sure that we also take into account the different perspectives and to be able to support social enterprises across the region. So that is the kind of transition ourselves that we have been through, right? And of course, our topic today is about patient capital and having an impact first approach, which really sit between impact investing and philanthropy, really give us a real test of what we mean by patient capital. And in one short year, we have lined up 3 social enterprises across Asia where we have already close to deploying the capital. And then, in my reflection of patients, right, I think Harvey already gave a very good overview. But from my standpoint, really, from the time when we look at ESG, when it is really more like a legal framework where you avoid harm, right, towards impact investing or impact first investing, where you want to be patient, you want to test out certain approaches, and knowing that some things may not work, and you need to course correct. So you need time, you need a flexibility in structuring and thinking and being able to help. But if I may summarize, if you look at patient capital, it has to do with something that you care, right? Love is patient, love is kind, right? So if we are doing patient capital, we can't do it if we don't have a certain passion or feelings, good feelings. I mean, just imagine if you make friends and you tell them, I will do you no harm. What sort of friendships do you get, right? But if you make friends and you say, hey, how can I help you, with your life, right, to be better? That is love and that is patience, right? And so if I just, apply this to the financial concept of impact investing, it has to be rooted, with that kind of passion. Otherwise, I'm afraid, we are just going through the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Wai Chu. Thank you for bringing it back to love. I love that. And I think your point about even taking more time to identify and structure the opportunities and understand them, right? That's the bit that often we overlook too. Could you maybe speak to, I think this space, as you say, between investing and philanthropy, right? It's this sort of blurry space. In theory, I would say family offices with your own capital have ultimate flexibility to explore that space in between, but actually most family offices don't explore it, right? So maybe if you could tell us more about that step, right? When you took that step to go into impact first and realized that you would be sacrificing something in terms of investment performance, financial return, to go into that, what were you hoping to get in return? And maybe an example.
Excellent questions, Harvey. Because we are building up an impact investment platform, and ultimately we must be mindful that the ultimate capital providers, be it corporates or family offices, that come and aggregate capital with us so that we have the resources and the capabilities to deploy in a smart way and in an effective way. Everyone comes with a different kind of preference, right? Those of us who work with family offices will know that they are not the same, right? Every family office has a certain difference, right? In terms of their preference and time horizon and so on and so forth. So our aim in gathering capital from various family offices, we need to see that alignment, right? To a large extent, there must be a common denominator on the common belief and a common conviction and a common passion of what we are really deploying into. So if I take a step back, right? Impact first investing, as Harvey mentioned, sounds hazy, right? When we talk to family offices, either you have a pot for philanthropy, and then you have a pot for impact investing. And then or investment, commercial or impact, right? And then we come along and we say, hey, you know what? We want to try out a new approach. And this approach actually hybridize, right, philanthropy and impact investing. And we call it impact first investing. And we support social enterprises whose DNA is to fulfill double bottom line, right? So when we target social enterprises and give them capital and support their growth and scaling of their business as well as impact, and their impact will actually impact communities and also support sustainability, which are the impact goals that we have took a lot of effort to align with all our investors. So that is the new catalytic model that we are trying to introduce into Asia. Our aim is not to have one option, but to create a range of options for different family offices, different foundations, different corporates who wanted to look at how to create impact. So of course you could continue with a philanthropic approach and expect no returns, or you could go do impact investing with perhaps commercial returns, or you could try out impact first investing, which we are trying to popularize and demonstrate, but with potentially a concessional return. And so that's why when we work with potential investors for the Impact First Fund, they all have philanthropic background, and they are all open to try and see, okay, what if I try achieving philanthropic goals through Impact First investing, right? Would that work? And when we put up this proposal, we are very grateful that we do receive enough support to actually try out this innovation. And frankly, I feel the burden. I would love to demonstrate that successes so that other my peers in the industry and the future funds that try our approach will also have a good foundation of success as well.
Great, thanks, Wai Chun. It's so great that you're pushing people to think about this new approach. So let me turn to Archana. I know I described this as a sort of blurry area in between, but actually I think what we're doing now is actually trying to make it not blurry, right? To have very defined strategies, to be very targeted. So I'd love to explore that with you, but maybe just starting with, the SIF. Tell us more about what that does.
Thanks, Harvey. Firstly, just want to say thank you to everyone for actually being here and showing your appetite for patient capital just before lunch. So really appreciate that. The Strategic Investment Fund, or SIF team of the Gates Foundation is essentially the corporate venture arm of the Gates Foundation. We're a shy, small team, so not many people know we exist. We're a $2.5 billion fund that has done 100+ investments in its 15-year history. Our portfolio of companies have served 100+ countries globally. We're a corporate venture arm just like Google Ventures or like the Emirates Bank's Innovation Fund here. And so we're investing in innovation that furthers the programmatic goals of the Gates Foundation. With impact as our North Star, we work in 3 streams that can be driving discovery, for example, life sciences and healthcare or agriculture, scaling innovation, especially in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, and unlocking markets, which can be through structured financing and bespoke solutions directly with suppliers and global development actors. In terms of instruments, I like to think of it as, you need different musical instruments for different tunes. We use different financial instruments for different business challenges. So it can be direct equity capital in companies which are technology enabled to get them to scale in markets we care about. It can be debt, sometimes concessional, sometimes a bit above concessional, to attract more sustainable capital into businesses. And then thirdly, it can be some of these direct supplier structured financing solutions where the overall market imbalance needs to shift to enable access to commodities. So that's a few examples of how we operate.
Great. And so could you help us sharpen this blurry concept of patient capital, right? How do we make sure, because even an organization with the resources of the Gates Foundation, in the overall scheme of things, right, in relation to the need and in relation to conventional mainstream capital, it's only a small sliver of capital. So how do you make sure that you target that patient capital at the right opportunities?
Yeah, it's a good question. We have different approaches to operate. So when we make strategic investments, firstly, all our strategic investments are viewed as long-term partnerships. We're not dating these organizations, these are marriages. And so we go through ups and downs together. Some of our investments have started out as grants. So they're a grant made by our programmatic technical team that then graduates into an equity investment. An example of that is what's today the largest mobile payments platform in Bangladesh. Started out as a grant from our financial services team. When it had proof of concept and we knew that this needed to be a sustainable business model and we could not be the only grant funder, it needed to leverage external capital. We came in with a Series A equity investment and then through its journey now has attracted a ton of impact and commercial capital. Today reaches 70 million customers for mobile money in Bangladesh. Another example can be where we're straight up coming in as an equity investor. An example of that is a fintech platform based in India that uses alternative data to perform credit scoring on women who lack formal access to capital. And so this company has, we came in with a Series B equity investment, saw the potential of it. The company has performed credit scoring for about 4 million women in India to unlock $2 billion of capital markets for these women. And we see the potential of these solutions in Africa. The investors and the company is excited to do that, but it's high risk and you don't understand the markets yet. And so we came in with a project, very specific project, grant-like funding to help the company experiment and explore what an Africa deployment could look like. So we're de-risking that with grant funding alongside an equity investment. A third approach is where we use the power of our balance sheet to solve a problem, but by mobilizing the entire ecosystem. And so an example of that is the global community came together to say family planning products is super important for women's health. But the prices of those products were too high for women in countries who need them. So we worked directly with the 2 largest suppliers of contraceptives at the time, had them reduce the price of their products by half, in exchange for which 6 countries were able to provide demand visibility and commitments to these companies to manufacture at reduced costs. What that did was enable 40 million units additionally of products to reach countries that needed it most and saved over $500 million in procurement savings for the entire global community. And those lower prices have sustained today long after our guarantee has been withdrawn, which is proof that the market just needed that impetus and catalytic support to work. In this journey, there's a few different ways we kind of work with other commercial investors. I personally believe that patient capital and commercial capital can collaborate, not always collide. It doesn't have to collide if done well. We structure very specific global access commitments in every single investment that we make, so everyone's clear about the impact we're solving for. And we do our best to make sure that those commitments are core to the business product and strategy, not a distraction from it. Anything that is an ancillary distraction or exploration with board support, we will support kind of through a grant funding. So we do that beforehand, align with commercial investors around the table to make sure we're all rowing the boat in the same direction, and so we're not giving the company 5 different directions on its Google Map destination. When we're working with a company, we can do things like bring in very specific board expertise to help the company fill a board gap with technical expertise that it maybe does not have access to that our networks can help with. Or we'll come in with impact evaluations or customer insight studies very specifically focused on the more underserved, harder to reach populations that we care about, which are also ways that then commercial investors can see the value proposition as a whole and provides them a bit more of a business case to keep doubling down.
Great, thank you. So many good points there. I think that point about adding value beyond the investment, I think is really key. But also this point about how the grant making and the investment sides of the foundation work in complementary ways, right? Because the other trap I see coming up is people, foundations thinking about going into investing, set it up as a separate silo with no connection to the grant making side, right? So you're actually leaving a lot of the synergy value off the table, which is a shame. Great, thank you so much. I have another question for the panel. I'm looking at the time. I sort of don't believe that number because I think we have more time than that. I'm just looking at the team. But I guess one question I think that will come up is this question of, if we're saying we're doing patient capital, where do we draw the line, right? What's too patient? What's patient enough, what's too patient, right? What's our threshold for what makes something still investable, even though we're going impact first? Right? Because I imagine one of the criticisms or questions people might have is, how do we make sure this is not just sloppy investing, right? How do we still stay disciplined as investors, even though we're being flexible and patient? So I'd love to hear the panel's reflections, maybe everyone actually, maybe starting with Sandeep.
Sure. Harvey, very useful question, and Archana, you covered some brilliant points around alignment and what it takes to do a market building exercise versus market extension. Makes a lot of sense. So I suppose it picks up from there, which is, from our perspective, if a company is in the phase of market building or an enterprise, social enterprise, then the amount of patience that's needed is almost endless. I'll give you an example of this, and it may not be clear. You use Google Maps as an example, but Google Maps, a venture of Google, would be one of the most patient investments, but it paid off for everybody on this planet. There is a lot of value to Google, but the huge amount of value to us. We don't need printed maps anymore, and anybody can drive now if they could. So I think there is that value of patience capital, which is unlimited amount of time needed when you're building something so gigantic that time is of no concern. And when it comes together, there's an exponential value that's created. Then there is the whole opportunity to solve for a problem in a better manner. It existed, a solution existed. You are solving for it with a better algorithm. And algorithms are cheap. 5 engineers, 3 engineers can build an algorithm. It doesn't require a whole lot of investment. Doesn't require a whole lot of patience. There, if I'm being super patient, I'm being sloppy. Because there, I've got to meet a timeline of product delivery. I've got to meet a timeline of improvement metrics visible to me. I've got to see that enacted in customer value, customer uptake, profitability. So when we invest in a company that's quality of improvement oriented, our most important target above and beyond impact realization is profitability. When we seek and invest in an access company, we want it to be the company that provides the most innovative solution, and we will exercise a lot of patience, and we'll alert our co-investors and our LPs that this is going to take time. It may not take 5 years, it may take 8 to 9 years. Our fund is a 10-year plus one fund. We may take the whole life, but it'll change a lot of lives. And when it occurs, when the inflection point occurs, it'll lead to significant profitability. It will occur, but you got to have patience. So in that situation, we will allow a nonsense cycle, a year of nonsense. Something went wrong, like we had a year of demonetization, we had a year of COVID, whatever. Things will occur. And in those years, access solutions will suffer because they are very fragile solutions, and they require continuous innovation. So I would imagine that if you reflect on the government side of things really quickly, government's capital is the most patient. Second is an enterprise like Google. A third would be a philanthropic organization that comes in and provides a lot of grant capital. Fourth would be private credit. Fifth would be private equity. Sixth would be venture capital. But venture capital also has to play patient when it comes to a solution like LinkedIn. When LinkedIn was invested, for 5 years, they had no business model. And those who did not invest said, oh, we did the right thing. Those who invested had another idea. So I think it is really subjected to what kind of solution you're providing to society, and we build upon that.
That's a great point. Actually, yeah, patience is not a new thing in investing, right? And it's about spotting the right opportunity. Anyone else want to come in on that?
Yeah, I'll just give a quick answer here, right? Philosophically, I think it is important that patience is not to be mixed with sloppy management of capital. So yes, we can be patient, but it doesn't mean we are not disciplined, right? So the way we have structured our impact first investment is into a typical fund, right? A VC or PE fund that you expect in the market, and it's a 10-year fund life with provision for extension or maybe a +1, +1 or +2, +2, kind of setup. So it does cater for sometimes the unexpected, right? Which we have been through last few years, for example. And so we need to be patient to provide for enough time and flexibility in order to support the impact first causes that we are trying to support. So that framework actually can work. Second aspect is that because we are active investors and we go in with taking a significant minority and taking up a board seat, we are part of the social enterprises that we support. So it's not a we versus them, right? We are in this together, and we are trying to develop the values and the solutions together, shoulder to shoulder, and we solve all these issues together, right? So this collaboration with stakeholders and ecosystem partners will be very important to ensure that we are going for disciplined execution, but yet with patience of how far we can go, right? And it can be determined at a collaborative manner. Third thing is we also design into the way we do impact investing is to bring our investors along, right? Our fund advisory committee is not there just for governance, but they actually join us for visits to the social enterprises that we are considering backing so that they can also lend their voice and add their value through their own unique networks. So we are really looking at community building, and so that maximizes the level of engagement. And it's like, think about this, it's like it takes a village to raise a child, right? And in the same way, we are trying to create that village, and it's not like a typical fund where the fund manager just deal with all the issues of investment management. But what we wanted to do is to make sure that collaboration is a hallmark. And then together we can exercise both that patience as well as the accountability and discipline.
Thanks, Wai Chu. And maybe Archana, I'll add to the question, because I think Wai Chu's point about how you work with other investors is really key, right? So maybe the threshold question, but also, because you're often going into these deals with other investors who have a different constitution, right, in terms of their capital from the Gates Foundation. So how do you work with them as well?
Yeah, just specifically on that, I'd say, yes, we have a different DNA. We are an impact-first investment arm. And if you look at biotech and life sciences, usually that's a binary outcome, right? Either the clinical asset works or doesn't work. And so there's a very high level of risk you take there. It's probably not a binary outcome when you're working in delivering products and services in Asia and Africa, but there is a high level of risk there. And so does that mean we will still end up taking a risk if we think there needs to be a shot on goal for this product or solution to exist, and this is the only way to try. But like any other smart investor, we won't make the same mistakes over and over again, and so learn from that. So maybe more broadly, there's two myths about patient capital impact investors that maybe I'll talk about. One is that impact investors don't have a commercial bent of mind. That is untrue. I've worked with enough commercial investors and I've been at this team for a long time and have seen how our financial diligence and financial analysis sometimes can be much more stringent and robust than other commercial investors who are, VCs who are used to taking certain levels of risk, and especially at Series A, Series B stages, it's still very early. So I don't think it's true that patient investors don't care about the commercial aspect. Especially at the Gates Foundation, we're very cognizant that for any innovation or company to be sustainable, for impact, to create impact, it has to be commercially sustainable. And so it's even more important to us that it's commercially sustainable, and the company is learning from the customers and the market to keep improvising on that. The second is, I'll say that the second myth is that patient capitals are eternally patient. We talked about love. Yes, there's love, but it's also tough love. It's, patient capital, but we can be impatient on progress. Outcomes take time, impact takes time, we all understand that, but we're not eternally patient on zero progress. We want to see, what's working, what's failing, what are we learning from what's failing, and how is that changing our next approach or the next iteration of product innovation or strategy or the markets we enter and exit and how we operate there. So we're impatient optimists, as we call ourselves at the Gates Foundation, but that very much shines through in the level of commitments and the rigor we bring to holding companies and teams accountable to having progress and at least feeding back what's the learnings from what's failing. And failure is completely okay, but as long as we're learning from it.
Great, thank you. So I think we're down to the last few minutes. Maybe if I just ask each of the panelists, because I know we've been talking about patient capital. I always think there's a risk that this becomes a bit abstract, right? We're talking about this sort of approach in abstract. And maybe what people might be also interested in learning about is what are some of the concrete opportunities that you see going forward, right? So as you look within your areas of focus and your strategies, what might be some areas of opportunity that you'd like to highlight for the audience? Maybe just quickly, White Chu maybe, and maybe coming back down.
Yes, given the patient capital and the design for what we do, which is within a fund life kind of horizon, we do want to go for opportunities that we see potential for scaling. And so the kind of proof of concept must be already done, right? So we are providing scaling capital, growth capital in essence. And for that, we see a lot of education space, healthcare space, providing access or quality tend to be very investable for us at this point.
I think instead of covering a particular space, I would focus on the lessons learned. Patient capital, like Ashna mentioned, generally has the deeper purpose of lessons learned, because the desire of an investor that brings patient capital is a longer term desire to see change, to seek change actively. So the opening hypothesis may not be the perfect hypothesis. So the journey of learning is a real journey of absorbing and realizing that the word expert doesn't exist at all. When somebody tells us that you are education sector expert, I cringe because no, that is our weakness. Because the moment I believe that I've learned all the lessons and I show up to an entrepreneur meeting thinking I know the answers, that's the day I'll make my wrong investment. Because I'm a sector expert, theoretically, that requires me to walk in with a knowledge that I don't know what this person's going to tell me, and I'm going to listen. So I think that attitude towards being an investor requires that we learn lessons in every entrepreneur meeting. So one of our KPIs is for all our employees to have a minimum of 3 to 5, somewhere in between, new investee meetings every week, independently with the team, doesn't matter. That changes how we learn and what we bring to the table. So what does that mean, and why is that important? Because if we learn the right lessons, we know exactly what type of capital to use, how much patience to employ, how to work and partner. I go back to the word partnership because that is ultimately how we realize and create value with our companies. And how do we take those lessons across geographic boundaries? If we are sectorally focused, we can transition geographies much faster, but we cannot take the exact lessons. We've got to localize the lessons, and localization will require that we unlearn and relearn the reality of the new market all over again. So I think there is that opportunity for all patient capital providers to be open-minded about taking lessons from one region to the other, taking lessons from one sector to another, taking lessons of one capital type to another, and bring it all together in a manner that achieves a bigger social cause. So that's my takeaway from this conversation and our preparation as well.
Yeah, thank you for underscoring that. I think that openness to learning is key, right? And the other thing I picked up from that is it's an attitude of humility, right? Which is often missing from the practice of investing, but I would say is actually key to being a patient capital investor. It's that belief that you haven't got all the answers before you walk into the room and you're looking to learn, right? And learn again. Great, thank you. Archana.
Yeah, I'd say two things. One, for commercial investors looking at kind of impact sectors or any other sector really, experiment with different approaches and ask different questions. The experiment with different approaches can be, it doesn't have to be the patient capital or impact investor around the table who's saying we need to do an impact evaluation to understand how this product or company reaches people, you know, in outside the top urban cities of a country. Any investor can ask that question. Any investor can kind of fund some of those studies and exhibit kind of a interest and business case understanding of that. And so I've been seeing more investors take that initiative, which is fantastic and really encouraging. So I would say experiment with some of those different approaches and support some of those studies with the companies where they need it. The second is ask different questions. So it's not just investing in agriculture or healthcare, but ask the question to the companies and to the entrepreneurs on how many of your customers are women? How many of your customers are outside, you know, are in XYZ income brackets? How many of your customers, where's the biggest revenue driver coming from? Is it the most affluent? Is it outside urban areas? Why is that? Does there need to be a change in the product or tech to reach these other customers? And why is that hard to do? I think the more we just explore and understand impact as different customer bases and ask those questions, the more I think a company will be incentivized to build that into its strategy and its DNA.
Great, thank you so much. So I think we're all expecting an impact investing day today, but I realize we've now had a session about love, patience, humility, kindness, you know, all the values that I think all of us cherish, right, actually in this room. And I think for me, that's underscoring the fact that those values are not inimical to investing, right? In fact, I think they're at the core of what we think of as impact investing and seeking impact. And actually, if you walk into a room, you know, there's always a power dynamic around capital. If you walk in with the money, right, you do hold the power. So the ability to change that dynamic in terms of how you're approaching it, you know, can allow you to actually achieve more with your money and with your investment, right? So probably that is the key takeaway I hope you can all leave with today. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to my panel. See you in the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for simplifying the concept of patient capital and sharing so many amazing, inspiring stories with us. Throughout this morning, we heard of several different aspects of impact investing. And I think our final plenary session will bring it all together. While we are transitioning, two quick announcements. Everyone who has booked their lunch at Park Hyatt and are going to attend breakout sessions over there, the shuttle buses are right outside. Don't miss your bus. Everyone who is going to stay here in St. Regis, I would like to inform you that we are going to have a lunch plus a documentary screening in this room at 1:30. You are welcome to join us, grab your lunch, and come back here. So now for our final plenary session, I'm delighted to welcome, for a fireside conversation, Mr. Badr Al Ulama, Director General of Abu Dhabi Investment Office, a seasoned practitioner who has been mobilizing capital for big impact in the West Asia region. He is a distinguished leader in transformative impact investments across multiple sectors in the region. I'm also delighted to invite to this conversation Ms. Becky Anderson, Managing Editor of CNN Abu Dhabi, and host of CNN's Emmy award-winning Connect the World with Becky Anderson.
Thank you so much for those kind words. And thank you. What a couple of days you have had, and you're only halfway through. What is this 3-day event? It's so enlightening, so energizing. I started yesterday by saying I felt there was a sense of hope here, and I feel that through the conversations that I've been having with so many people here. Bada, please sit down. It's an absolute delight to be with my seasoned, esteemed guest here. Thank you for the introduction. Bada, of course, is from the Abu Dhabi Investment Office. You've played a key role in steering ADIO's strategic efforts, helping spark sustainable growth here and drawing cutting-edge investments into Abu Dhabi. You've got a deep understanding of the complex investment landscapes, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion about how we can and you try and ensure that these investments are impactful. I was really struck as I was reading into ADIO's mandate of two words: progress and purpose. And that, to me, sort of brings together the kind of spirit of what you're doing in your current role, heading up ADIO. The diversification of this economy, I think, for most people in this room, will be clear. But I think it's important just to start with you, Bada, to get a sense from you about what you feel impact investing really means to you, and how this country's investment philosophy goes beyond profit, focusing on both national and global impact, that nexus of progress and purpose. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. And Becky, you don't cease to surprise us. You bring a lot of energy. And we're very fortunate that you were moderating a lot of different sessions for this obviously very important event that is being held in Abu Dhabi. I think in general, a lot of people think of companies as profit. A lot of people see companies for the promise of a profit. And the two words that Becky picked up with respect to what Abu Dhabi Investment Office stands for, progress and purpose. Profit will come. It's not the main issue that's driving our thinking in terms of building a nation. In Abu Dhabi, we focus a lot from looking at things from a perspective of nation building. And we take this from our late founding president, His Highness Sheikh Zayed, who brought those principles of bringing 7 separate states together, uniting them with a sense of purpose for progress. There was no mention of profit. And if there was an idea or a direction of profit, you could have sat down, waited for all the oil income to come through, and said, I'm satisfied. But that's not satisfying. That's not satisfying. So for us, the DNA of the country, the way that the country has been structured from the top leadership all the way down to the individuals, is that we work as a team. The country has been formed as a team, 7 Emirates, united, one purpose, working together for progress, and the focus has been human capital. So I wanted to point out, just to speak about not just the past, but speak about the future as well, Becky. A few years ago, and I'm sure you probably remember this, at one of the government summits that was being held in Dubai, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, our current president, put out a futuristic statement out there. He said, I'm not thinking about today, I'm not thinking about the next 10 years, I'm not thinking about the next 20 years. This is what typically governments do. I'm thinking about the last barrel of oil. I'm thinking about the next 50 years. And in 50 years, with the last barrel of oil, when we export it out, are we going to celebrate or are we going to be disappointed? And if we are going to be disappointed, that means that everything we are doing today in terms of diversification, in terms of nation building, in terms of investing in capacity and investing in human capital is going in the wrong direction. But he put that out there. He didn't tell us as maybe business leaders to figure it out. He said, this is the end that I want everyone to think about. And now you go and start planning out what you need to do to make sure that when we get to 2070, and I might not be there, they're probably going to be my daughter or maybe her kids, we're going to be celebrating. We're going to be celebrating so hard that we're going to say that back in the day, His Highness said the statement, and we all worked together as one country, as one team, to get to that point of celebration. I think that's the true DNA of this country.
Let's talk about some of the real tangible work that you are doing at ADIO and how it shapes that story for the future, if you will. I mean, you're investing, just give us a sense of the investing principles, if you will, just to start.
So we look at two things. How many jobs are you going to create, and how much investment are you going to bring into the country? And the purpose behind how much investment you're going to bring into the country, because it's going to reflect in terms of how many jobs you're going to create, how much opportunities are you going to give to the entrepreneurs and to the small and medium-sized enterprises, how much export are you going to generate out of this country, how many people are going to move from abroad and consider the UAE to be a second home, if not a primary residence for themselves. And we look at it from that perspective because we want people to succeed. And I say this is quite unique about Abu Dhabi, Becky, because a lot of places in the region are trying to attract capital. They're trying to attract capital thinking about themselves. And I don't think this is what Abu Dhabi wants. We think of attracting capital in the form of a partnership. I always say this. When we talk about investment, we don't say invest in Abu Dhabi, we say invest with Abu Dhabi. Whether it was for socioeconomic development, whether it was for exporting, whether it was for building commercial opportunities, it's an investment with Abu Dhabi, which means I cannot allow an opportunity to fail. So if I promise you and I invite you to come and set up a base in Abu Dhabi to be successful, it's because I want us both to be successful. Taking that from a perspective of social enterprise or social development, that is the truest form of partnership, where it's not a for-profit exercise. It is a methodology where we're thinking about the full value chain, partnering up with the suppliers, partnering up with the investors, partnering up with the government, partnering up with the schools, with the students, because we want to make this a successful outcome for all. And that is something that is quite unique to Abu Dhabi that I have not seen anywhere else in the region.
So when you think of the term social impact investing, how does that inform the decisions you are making in terms of the work that ADIO is doing?
We think of it from a very simple perspective of calling it how much shared value are you creating through this investment or impact. If we can measure the shared value that is being created from any investment, and usually it's quite hard, because probably the hardest thing for anyone to do is to see an opportunity not for what it is, but for what it can become. And you have to use a little bit of imagination and a little bit of creativity, and to be honest, a little bit of faith, to be able to convince someone to take that extra step to get towards an outcome that it's very hard to put your finger on, but boy oh boy, if it does hit, can you imagine what are the potential implications of it? And let me say this from a context of something that I went through. I had the pleasure of actually heading up an organization that made aircraft parts. His Highness the President had asked us to set up this facility to make aircraft parts for Airbus and Boeing in a city that is about an hour 15, an hour 30 minutes away from Abu Dhabi. And the city tends to be more focused on education and academia and government jobs. So to be able to set up a factory that makes aircraft parts, and I'm talking about parts that hopefully when all of you go back home on Emirates or Etihad or any other airline that you've come through, most probably those parts are manufactured in the city or in the factory that I used to work in. The reason His Highness had a vision of setting up that factory there, because again, being a visionary, he could see an opportunity for a group of people that have never made a car part, that have never made a furniture part, that have never made a train part, to leapfrog into making an aircraft part for the first time. And these are high school leavers. These are people that have no bachelor's degree, maybe they dropped out of school, but we had to build on the faith that His Highness had set on this project to be set up in Al Ain and be able to convince a group of people to come together and say, you know what? We are going to be making primary structures on the wings and on the tail, where the flag is, for Airbus and Boeing, and they're going to be better than whatever you manufacture in Europe and the US. And by the way, to give us confidence that we've been doing it in the right way, that this is not us, pumping up ourselves and saying we did it the right way and we've been achieving anything. Airbus and Boeing, year by year, are giving us more work, more commitments, saying from $1 billion commitments of manufacturing parts in Al Ain to over $7.5 billion of commitments, saying whatever you manufacture, we buy. You guys are doing great. Keep on doing it and do it well. And by the way, the people that work in that factory, most of you, probably the people from the UAE know this, but a lot of the guests that are coming from abroad don't know this. 64% are locals from the UAE, of about 700 people. 9 out of 10 people locals that you'll meet in the factory are women. Single, divorcees, widows, mother of 4 kids, not married, but they manage that factory tremendously well. And the only time that we had no issues in that factory was when all the men were out. That was the only time that I would hear 0 complaints.
But that's a great example of the kind of future-led thinking and the social impact of a big investment like that for the benefit of the local community here, first and foremost. I just wonder whether this is a good opportunity then to talk about some of the work, some of the tangible examples of what ADIO and the UAE as a whole, it has to be said, has been doing and investing in programs that empower innovators and entrepreneurs. I just wonder whether you can give us some tangible examples which will resonate very specifically for this audience on the sort of projects that have a wider social enterprise ecosystem.
Sure. I mean, for those of you that are going to be around tomorrow and the day after, we do have something that we started back in October of last year. We announced to the world that Abu Dhabi will become the capital for smart and autonomous vehicles. And why smart and why autonomous? Because we believe that the future of mobility is going to be more clean, more electric, and potentially without any pilots, without any car drivers, without any boat captains, and without any airline pilots.
That's not straight away, is it, though?
Like I said, we need to not look for what it is, but what it can become. And that is honestly an art. And it's not an easy art to actually be able to adopt, because we might get it wrong. But do I believe it's going to happen in the next 5 years? Probably. I wouldn't rule it out. Anyhow, looking into that context, you're going to see air taxis, you're going to see autonomous buses, and you're going to see autonomous vessels on the boats, or boats that are autonomous, that are all going to be demonstrated that Abu Dhabi will become the capital. Now, for us to attract companies to say, by the way, this is a safe place to work, this place has the best schools for your kids, it has the best communities for you to learn from each other, and to be honest, it's at the center of the world. If you remember from yesterday's opening discussion, it's been able to manage a very difficult kind of dialogue between East and West, and it's managed both ways by not taking anybody's side, but taking the side of what matters, which is human progress and human prosperity. So we've been inviting these companies, and we've told these companies, by establishing a presence here, we as the Abu Dhabi Investment Office will support. We will support you with some on-the-ground incentives, with some setting up expenses, but more importantly, we want to understand what is the return on my community. Because it's not a matter of you coming and setting up the businesses here. I need to think about the next generation. The next generation needs to be as excited and enthusiastic about flying in an air taxi. So I was telling Becky this, we've asked them to adopt schools. Why adopt schools? Like anywhere else in the world. This is not an Abu Dhabi problem, this is not a UAE problem, this is not a regional problem, this is not a US problem. The closer you are to the capital, the closer you are to the main city, the better the schools, the better the teachers. And guess what? The students believe that they're going to become the next CEO, the next minister, the next future leader. The further away that you are from the school, the less hope you have. And essentially, the worst thing that we collectively can do is if we cannot build the confidence of a child. Because if the child loses confidence, that's the beginning of the end, right? For any society. So what we want is we want these companies to adopt schools. If you're going to be, in the case of the UAE, we have a company that provides satellite coverage to 80% of the global population. It's in a place called Suehan. We want Yasat to adopt a school in Suehan. The company that makes aircraft parts is in the city of Al Ain. We want Strata to adopt a school in Al Ain. So these companies that are coming from abroad, air taxis, autonomous cars, we want them to adopt schools. And we want them to do science fairs. We want them to do career fairs. We want them to go and engage with the students and give them hope that they can graduate from this school and they can become the next annotator. They can become the next AI scientist. That is what we do as Abu Dhabi Investment Office. We act as an enabling platform to bridge between what the government wants to achieve and what the private sector can achieve.
And what's your experience? Because the Savvy cluster, for example, the autonomous vehicle and AI cluster at Mazda here, which you were just alluding to earlier, that's a great example of sort of building an ecosystem around a certain sector. These exist in other places around the world. So through the work that you've been doing, what have you learned are the key incentives for a company to come here as opposed to elsewhere? What are you offering here? And you talked about security and safety, and those of us who live here are, well understand the benefits of living here as opposed to elsewhere. But there are clusters incentivized in many places around the world. So what's been key for you as a draw?
I think I couldn't have said it better than you did. We bring purpose and we bring progress. And the promise for growth is what every company wants to achieve. And again, for those of you that are actually tracking how the country is performing, we have signed multiple bilateral and multilateral agreements with the rest of the world. We actually connect any company in this part of the world to over 30 countries through multilateral and bilateral agreements and to 2 billion people. So essentially, actually we quantified it, it's $10 trillion economies. And by having a presence in Abu Dhabi, it's not about selling to Abu Dhabi, or it's not about selling to the United Arab Emirates. It's about using this as a platform for growth. What we've seen when we've, going back to your point about the Savvy cluster or any other cluster that is established anywhere else in the world, what they don't get is they don't get somebody on the other side that's willing to listen and willing to behave and act. And if for those of you that listened to Minister Shamma al-Mazrou'i speak yesterday, serve those companies for the joint benefit of the company and the government. We serve. We don't help. We don't support. We serve. And we take it from that perspective.
I want to spend the last 10 minutes of this, 10, 12 minutes then, building on some of what you've just said there. I think it's important that we establish what lessons you are learning here and applying them in these cross-border partnerships, these SEPA partnerships that we are seeing emerging at breakneck speed, I have to say. I think 79 days to sign up one of the partnerships most recently. I mean, this is remarkable. And some might say, what's the benefit of, running towards these partnerships? I think you've just, nailed part of what that is. It's you've got people on both sides now, really singing from the same song sheet. But I think for the benefit of this audience, when they are looking at impact capital and collaborating through partnerships oftentimes to ensure that that capital is best invested, how do you see cross-border partnerships developing? I mean, we know just in the world of philanthropic capital, regulatory environments are really important. And again, there's been much work done here on what we call the supra infrastructure here, rather than just sort of, bricks and mortar and human capital. There's been an awful lot of work done behind the scenes in building the sort of wrapper around
this evolving economy?
I like the question, to be honest, Becky. And again, you know, when you mention regulatory environment, you can go to any country around the world and they'll tell you 100 reasons why they can't do something. The only opportunity that you will get to flip that conversation from can't do to can do is if you can actually talk about shared value, right? So I need to be able to align to say that our common purpose is to create jobs, or our common purpose is to actually, in the case of our partnership with the Gates Foundation, eradicate polio or eradicate malaria. The point that I'm trying to get to is that if the common purpose was not built on the perspective of what's in it for me versus what's in it for you, it's a win-win strategy that we're trying to achieve a certain common goal, I think all the barriers to entry will be dropped, right? Because regulatory control is within the government's purview. They can decide to drop it or they can decide to increase it and make your life difficult. And I want to give a story because I think that it's always important to highlight these stories that give you more color about what I'm saying. And I was partly involved in an investment that the UAE has in Algeria. Out of all the places in the world, you'd ask, why Algeria? What is this investment about? Considering that I was running a factory that made aircraft parts, they said, okay, since you understand factories, why don't you get involved in this investment that we have in Algeria? For those of you that don't know this, but we actually manufacture Daimler cars in Algeria in partnership with Daimler in Germany. Now, this entire transaction of manufacturing G-Wagons, the G-classes that you see on the streets, the big trucks, it's all manufactured in Algeria. And it was facilitated by the UAE, not for the UAE, for Algeria, for creating jobs in Algeria. And we did this in partnership with the Algerian government and in partnership with Daimler. So we got three parties sitting around the table saying, Germans, you want to do low-cost manufacturing? Tick the box, Algeria. We want to partner up with Algeria and actually get returns on our investment in a low-cost environment? Tick the box, do it in Algeria. Algerians want to create jobs for their youth and create, you know, an opportunity for them to actually get towards manufacturing other vehicles in the future? Tick the box, Algeria. Shared value, common purpose, progress of nation, and it was an easy outcome. Today, we are manufacturing thousands of cars in Algeria, but the UAE doesn't go about and saying, we did it, this is us, we're doing this. It's about combining our efforts because it wasn't driven for our own needs. It was bringing three parties together to achieve a common purpose.
We started yesterday talking about a vacuum in global leadership, and the timing of this event couldn't be better as we look to One Asia united. You know, and we talked to the minister from Indonesia about the role of Indonesia through G20 and ASEAN. You know, you've seen the emergence of, you know, a myriad of sort of, you know, powerful countries across the Asian region. And then you marry up the opportunity for philanthropic capital united as One Asia. What does that, you see where the power can lie. And as we see the rewiring of globalization, the reshoring of the supply chains, I can see where the opportunities are, and we see them very clearly where the opportunities are here for the UAE. When you are very specifically talking to this audience about social impact investing, that philanthropic capital through sort of net zero and all the good work that was done at COP28, through water, food and security issues, against a backdrop of, sadly, you know, a roiling region, and not just region, we have conflict elsewhere as well, and this deep polarization and divide. What's your message as people are here, you know, hold these meetings and network here? What's your very specific message from you as head of ADIO about what they should be exploring?
Look, honestly, when you think about these global issues, you know, and it's very difficult because a lot of people won't be able to understand it in the context of themselves. And let me try to again put some color around this, color around what I'm trying to say. when we talk about global warming, it's very easy for all of us in this room to say, well, that doesn't affect me because I'm in a very hot country, right? But what happened last week with the superstorms tells you that global warming is a real issue, right? Climate crisis is a real issue. And again, for the UAE to sit, if it wanted to, in the backseat and say, not my problem, you know, it's a US problem, it's a China problem, they're the ones that are actually producing a lot of things that is contributing to CO2 emissions and everything else, we could have done that. And then last week we would have been reminded that the climate change is not, you know, a China problem, a US problem, it is the world's problem. And this is what I'm trying to get to, is that, you know, we shouldn't kid ourselves or fool ourselves that the movement of migration or the global warming or the inequality that exists in other parts of the world are not the world's problems. It's not, you know, a global issue that we should care about. And that's why what you guys do as social impact, because there was a lot of philanthropists that I met during this event, is so important, because you are doing something that is beyond what people understand, that could affect your country or your society or your community, or maybe not you today, but your grandchildren in, you know, 50 years from now. But you're trying to do something about it. And that is the perspective that, again, I go back to our founding president, His Highness Sheikh Zayed, said in the past, right? What is good for the world is good for Abu Dhabi. It's good for the UAE. And we take it from that perspective. We are plugged into the global system. When we try to help people or work with people or serve people or support people, we're doing it because we think what's good for them is good for us. And what's good for us should be good for them as well. And again, I want to say thank you to all the philanthropists that have come all the way around the world to maybe consider Abu Dhabi as a partner, because this is so important, not for us, not for your country, but for the rest of the world. You are making a difference to someone somewhere to prevent an issue that could affect all of us in the future.
That's brilliant to hear. Finally then, and you brought up a number of issues, and last week, as you say, a great reminder of the fact that we're all in the crosshairs of so much of this, and climate as a sort of existential crisis is sort of front and center. You just finally sort of work us through where you see your primary focus, as it were, going forward. Where are your clear priority pillars as you consider today and going forward? I mean, you know, net zero and the energy transition, I've seen, you know, a tremendous amount of work through your office in ensuring that there is a key focus there. There and where else?
Developing the next generation of change makers. Honestly, that's the hardest part, Becky. It's you know, we could solve a problem today. There will be 10 other problems that we need to solve tomorrow, and that's you know, that's essence what life is all about. We're going to be facing challenges. We're always going to look for opportunities, and we're always going to do our level best to actually progress and move forward. The hardest part is developing the next generation of change makers. And that's what we want to do through our projects, through our incentives, through all the FDI programs that we're launching, through all the investments that we're doing around the world, is to develop that next generation of change makers that can make a difference to this world. And that's probably the single most important objective, not at my level. I'm not speaking about Abu Dhabi Investment Office. I think at the Abu Dhabi and the UAE government level. Develop the next generation of change makers.
And with that, we're going to leave it there. I'm not going to do any more, because what you've...
I felt I was being interrogated, but I'm relieved, actually, that...
I hope it didn't feel like an interrogation. It's been absolutely fascinating. You know, I've been here for more than 10 years. I'm well aware of the work that you do at ADIO. I applaud you. I applaud the evolution from my side, and we were talking about this earlier on. There was a period of time, and this is over sort of 20 years of coming in, when in the position that I'm in storytelling, there was a period of time when we did a lot of looking at visions, and it was tough for me to look at what was going on here and to sell a vision to a wider global audience. And it's so much easier now, today, to tell the stories rather than sell the visions, because there is substantive, successful work here on a local basis, which has real resonance on a global basis. So I applaud you for that, and I thank you and your colleagues who are gathered with us today. And I do hope that this has been valuable. I know it has. I wish you the best for the rest of this conference from both of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the powerful and inspiring words. Ladies and gentlemen, we conclude our morning plenary session now. Just a reminder, we will have a documentary screening at 1:30 in this room, so you can grab your lunch and come back here. We will also meet back in this room for the networking night, which will start at 6 p.m. Enjoy your lunch and have a good day.